Hey everybody, welcome to the Monday night live stream. This is Jim Toscano, and you are tuning into Filling in the Grooves. And it's sort of become the interview show. You know, this started out a long time ago as like a drummer, demonstration kind of platform, and then it became, let me interview all my musician friends, and then it became, let's start bringing in all of our drummer friends. And now it's just become sort of, well, nobody's told me no yet. So I guess that's a good thing, right? I'm just going to keep asking guys to come in. But it's become a really great, fun drummer hang and, just sharing ideas and stories. And so that's really what it's about. And so if you're joining us for the first time, that's kind of what we're doing here. And I want to thank some companies, ProLogic's Percussion Offset Pedals, Sabian Cymbals and Black Magic Designs for all of their support with me, and Vader Drumsticks. Last but not least, Vader. And in fact, tonight we're giving away 6 pairs of Vader sticks, which I'll announce in a little bit. We're going to announce the winner on the show with my guest because it's a signature model of my guest with Vader, so that's going to be really fun. And a couple of upcoming live streams I have. Ray Levere is a great New York drummer who has a great story, and it's really inspirational. He'll be on, and my good buddy Fav, John Favicki, is going to be on. We're going to be talking about Elements and his band. He's got a great fusion band. And then I have Simon Phillips on after those two guys, and we'll keep the ball rolling. There's a whole host of people that we're still working out dates on, but it's booked into August. So we have lots of goodies coming up. Yeah, man. So I want to introduce my guest tonight. This is the first time that we're having, we never pigeonhole people into genres. But he comes from a background of extreme metal, and that'll be the first extreme metal drummer that we're having on. But he's not just an extreme metal drummer. If you ever see his DVD, he's playing like incredible musical drumming, ostinato playing, all this fun stuff with elements of jazz and fusion and progressive and all these goodies. He is known for playing with bands like Hate Eternal, Nile, his own newest project, which is Serpent's Rise, which is really incredible instrumental progressive metal, we'll say. We'll put it in sort of a category, and he's also become really a world-renowned clinician, doing clinics all over the place, and being written up in Modern Drummer and all the drum mags, and also performing at PASIC at one point, and some great drum festivals, and he's also a Vader artist, so I wanted to mention that, and playing DW drums and Meinl cymbals. We'll get into all the gear when he comes on. But my guest tonight is none other than Derek Roddy, and he breeds pythons, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, Derek Roddy.
Hey, Jim. That's awesome.
And by the way, this is Initiation Rituals from Serpent's Rise from 2018. And I think it'll be apropos, at some point we're going to kind of delve into the evolution of blast beats. Which, by the way, is appropriate, being that Derek's book, The Evolution of Blast Beats, right here, this is my studio copy, not to be lent out to any students because they won't give it back. the studio copy of The Evolution of Last Beats. Really incredible book that I grabbed this to have it in my studio for teaching, but I've learned a lot from it, and I had to do some recording at the time that I bought this where I was trying to up my game, and this was extremely instrumental and helpful in that. So just wanted to mention. So
cool.
hopefully that was a good intro. Welcome to the show.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Jim. Awesome. Yeah, absolutely perfect.
So good to see you, man. This is really our first
Yeah.
meeting and our first hang, which, you know, I've been kind of
Right.
following you for a while. I've watched a lot of your video content and some of the stuff you've done on Drumeo, which is pretty recent. And I've also gone down the rabbit hole of snake breeding with you on that journey and looking at videos and checking out your site. So I'm excited about that as well. We'll definitely save that for a little later. We're going to dig into the drumming story first.
Sure.
But tell us what you're up to like now these days and just kind of give us a synopsis before I delve back into your childhood.
Well, basically, I put most of my energy and efforts into the reptiles these days as far as, a profession, so to speak.
Right.
And it's allowed me this avenue to be able to kind of get back to where I felt when I was a lot younger, playing with people and playing music and being able to kind of hook up with different people different times of the week and jam. And it's kind of led down this road of a lot of playing, really. I mean, especially during COVID, man, that was like a really good opportunity. At first, everybody obviously was taking it easy and whatnot, but as things started to ease up, we started to get together, a few times a week and writing songs. And so I got a couple of different things going on that we'll talk about, but Serpent's Rise is pretty much my main project, I guess you could say, main band. And I'm also working with another group of guys here. It's also kind of that progressive metal kind of vibe. This has a little more of a modern kind of feel, more modern and popular kind of progressive metal kind of feel, whereas Serpents is a little more dissonant and underground, and it's you got to be kind of calculated in your thinking to really grasp all of the stuff going on with Serpent's Rise. So the other stuff with the other band is a little more digestible, so to speak.
I mean, there's so many influences, and I think we could probably go down a rabbit hole of where all those influences come together. But I think on Serpent's Rise, you were writing that stuff from the guitar as well, right?
Yeah.
Which
And it
I'm
wasn't
always
because
jealous
I-
of you guys that can play guitar and drums because I don't play guitar at all. I wish I could. But like, how does the writing
My-
process then go?
Well, my brother played. My brother's almost 10 years older. He's 9 years older than me. And so when he was out looking for girls, when he was in his teens, and it was late at night on the weekends, I was sneaking in his room and just learned to play his, riffs and playing the Kiss and Black Sabbath and Alice Cooper, and all the way down to trying to play Mahavishna and Return to Forever, and all of this other kind of stuff. And I'm not really like a great player by any means, but I can get my ideas down at least, over the years of just practicing and working in music stores all my life, gave me an opportunity to be able to play guitars and that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So initially didn't want to be the sole songwriter, or even for this to be my, Derek Roddy's band, or so to speak. But it took me so long to find consistent guys that if I was going to wait around, I mean, I started Serpent's Rise in the early 2000s. By the time I had left Hate Eternal in 2006, and by the time 2008 rolled around, I just ended up recording everything myself and just doing it myself because it just left me no choice. So
Take me through that
and
process a
even
little.
at that, well, I mean, even at that, if I couldn't have done it on my own, I would have done like our buddy John Fav has done in the past, where you just hire guys out, and that would
Right.
eventually ended up happening. But, something about being in the room with a few people and being creative and like, I don't know, it just took me back to like when I was jamming with my brother when I was a kid, or when I was playing with some of my high school buddies. And, we had a band and we were playing all over South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina when I was in high school, VFW huts and, underground kind of, attics and basements and stuff, because none of us were old enough to drink. We weren't playing in bars or whatnot, so. But I was playing out at a really early age, and just the whole idea of playing with people, man, I don't like playing by myself. I mean, I like doing the clinics and stuff, but when it really comes to like just me playing, I don't feel like play that well by myself,
Isn't
like
it?
I definitely play better when I'm playing with people, and
Yeah,
it's just something I enjoy.
it's kind of funny, like what you're saying about like over COVID. So a lot of people got into doing remote sessions. I was doing that in here already, but when you do a remote session, it's like everything's already kind of laid down. You're putting your drums on there. Maybe they're replacing parts later, but it doesn't have that cohesion that being in the same room and recording with a bunch of guys has, or a bunch of gals, whatever it is,
writing.
or even the writing, right? And to that collaborative thing is so important, man. And it's like I feel like that's been missing for a while. I feel like it's coming back, but that collaborative thing is so important, man. I
guess it depends on where you look too. I mean, I know there's plenty of bands out there that are doing some really cool stuff, and you just got to look for it. It's the same as always, though. I mean, like when we were younger, I'm 50 this year. I mean, when I was a kid, man, the only way I found out about something was through fanzines or friends, or it was mail. Everything was by mail, snail mail. You waited weeks to get stuff, and you found out about it just through word of mouth. But good music it would rise to the top, so to speak. Like, so the bands would always the great bands, and I laugh about it now. I think about being, however old I was, high school or middle school or whatever, and hearing Metallica for the first time.
Right.
And if you would have told me then that they are going to be the highest selling, unit band in the world in 2020, I would have laughed.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like, there's no way. I mean, that to me is ridiculous, So
yeah, and they're coming from
something
that
to be said about that era of like how you created music and what you saw yourselves as a unit, as opposed to all of these. I see a lot of egos that are like trying to like reach out of the top, as much as they can, as opposed to wanting to really work and make a unit happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because
it's coming back.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many musicians that, young musicians that are just existing on social media only. So they're not really playing with anybody. So they're playing either to tracks or they're playing by themselves. And it's cool. Yeah. I mean, it's great. You see some great things happening, but I'm waiting for like more collaborative, things to come about. But
right.
all of the guys from sort of our generation and a little bit later, I think in all the discussions I've been having with people, it's everybody's wanting so bad to get together in a room with people, record, get out and play shows.
Oh, yeah.
And there's one band that, we basically didn't play for a couple of years because of the pandemic, and we just played this past Saturday night, just out at a festival in Queens, New York. And it was just super great to like be on the same stage and all play together after a couple of years. So.
Oh yeah. See, down here, stuff kind of was continuing as normal. So like Serpent's Rise, since the whole COVID thing started, we probably did 5 shows or so.
Wow.
We recently, about 3 weeks ago, played a show with Obituary here in town. It was sold out, like packed to the brim. So that's cool. So
what venue would that? What venue is that?
This one down here was Piper's, but there's been several places. There's Las Rosas. There's O'Malley's now. There's a lot of different places that have been doing that kind of stuff. A lot of other like Funky Biscuit has been. I'm sure you've probably heard of that place down here. It's pretty well known by now. Boca Box is doing some like Aristocrats will come in. So things are kind of like back to normal back here as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, and I see a lot of the European bands coming through the States again, which
Yeah.
is good seeing some of those bands return. So just on the back to the writing for 1 second with Serpent's Rise. So when you were like, I'm just going to start doing this, what was the process like? Was it starting with a drum bed first, or starting with a guitar bed, or like what is your mental process for it, or does it change with each tune?
It changes. It changes. Like some things will be drum related, where I'll have some type of idea, and then some things are just melodic related, where I'm not even here, but it's if it comes back to me more than once or twice in a week, I'll definitely take the time to come and put the idea down.
Are you singing it into your
Yeah.
voice notes?
No, because I find that I have too much stuff that won't stick.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, if I hum something and then a couple days later or the next day it hits me again, then I might, but I just don't like any random idea. I don't just like put down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I got you.
Um,
I will
yeah.
tend to, like, if I have something that's stuck in my head throughout the day and I know I'm not going to get in the studio, that day or the next day, I'll just kind of sing it, even if it's drum phonetics, like I'll sing it into my phone just so it's there. But you're right. Like if it goes away, it probably wasn't the one that was going to stick anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So it'll show up again if it's a keeper, right? So
yeah, exactly. Because I'm different with drum ideas. With drum ideas, most always I'll either hum it out or write it, rudimentarily, like write it, and just to have some type of reference to it, because otherwise that kind of stuff I'll tend to forget, because I got so many so many different rhythms and things going through my head all the time, just on a daily basis. It's like gears or something, so I try to make sure. And like for me, like the rhythmical possibilities are kind of never ending.
Yeah, they're sort of endless, right?
But the melodic ideas for me, and I don't know whether that's because it's my limited education and melodic versus rhythmic versus whatever. I mean, I'm pretty good. I've got really good pitch as far as that's concerned, and I can hear like try and have tones,
right,
and stuff. So I don't know. That's weird.
Do you write? So do you write from the guitar usually? If it's a melodic thing, you get it in your head, go to the guitar, start working it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then typically, like once I have a song structure done, I'll go with drums first, and I usually don't I don't record the clicks hardly ever. The only time I would do something like that is if I was doing something for somebody else,
Right.
But for me personally, I'll come and I'll record some ideas, because I like that kind of push and pull.
Right.
Things need to rush sometimes. And I'm not saying you can't do that with click. You can, but it's why spend all the time programming all of that stuff in a click when you can just do it naturally? My meter's pretty good. I've been playing the clicks most of my life, in practice.
Right.
But just in recording, and when we play with the band like live, I've never done that. We don't have sequences or anything like that, so
Yeah.
so I would just, I would get it in my head. I would record it on the drums first. If I did need a click, like if there was an area where there's no drums and there was a guitar thing going on, I would just go back and manually just count it and fit it in that space. That's easy to do in the computer nowadays. It was harder with tape machines.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
But I mean, that's just kind of the process. Sometimes I will put the guitars down and then I'll record drums to the guitars.
Right.
Right. And every once in a while I might use a click or something like that. It depends on the riff, depends on the feel that I'm going for. There's like all this other outside things, stuff that's involved in making that decision for me, at least,
Right. I mean,
how much coffee I've had.
Oh, I know about that. I mean, like in your book, you have these great play along tracks, and that's all with a click, isn't it?
Yeah.
For the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For examples, when I would do something for a book for people to follow, I don't want them following my pseudo time.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
But
I have
that's
gone back and taken drum tracks and manually, just with the snare or just with the rim click, put a click in it.
right. Yeah, yeah.
That way, at least people have something to follow, and it's not just raw drums.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do that a good bit as well.
Got you.
Yeah.
So now Serpent's Rise, is it like the always the same group of guys now?
Pretty much, yeah. We just recently had a guitar player leave, and that kind of broke all of our hearts.
Oh
It
man.
took us it was like blowing a tire on the road. It took us a little bit to get out of the car and to get the jack out and to get the wheel off and back
Yeah.
on and back on the road. But we're cool.
Yeah.
Let's go. We just said we're just gonna stay at 3-piece and whatever.
Sweet. And it's all instrumental?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, unless I find like somebody that's exceptionally good at singing at some point, I mean, actually singing.
Right.
Which singers are hard to find. They always have been.
Yeah.
They're like a mythical unicorn or something.
So pre Serpent's Rise, were you writing with any of the other bands where you were a sideman?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hate Eternal. When I came aboard with Eric, he was like, we're a band, and it's like none of this sideman stuff. I was like, all right,
Right.
man, well, that's cool. That's kind of what I'm looking for. And I really enjoyed playing with Eric because it's like me, especially with Jared. Because when Jared was in the band before he passed away, the three of us just became different people on stage, and it was a connection that the three of us had that I haven't seen with any other extreme metal band. I mean, and when Eric and I still had it, and then when we brought Randy on board, Randy had it. He just wasn't used to the environment because he was young and touring and whatnot. And
Right.
but I really enjoyed that, and I wrote songs. Yeah, with that. Same thing with Malevolent Creation.
Right.
A lot of the other, like, even when guys would ask me, like Ron Vento from Aurora Borealis, he brought me in and he was like, "Hey, dude, man, you got any songs?"
Nice.
He's like, "I kind of need like 3 more songs." I was like, "Yeah, I could probably come up with something." So yeah, I've never had anybody like completely shut me down on writing, so to speak.
Right, right. I mean, that's great. I mean, to have that, again, that collaborative spirit, it really makes for, I think, more camaraderie, right? Because everybody's bringing something to the table.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you still end up with, a lot of the ego factors that go along with like being, the lead singer or being like, the star of the band or whatever that is.
Right.
And that's a whole other like set of obstacles, and sometimes it's music related, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's personalities, I mean, sometimes it's all of the above.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you just have to be able to navigate those kind of environments when stuff like that happens.
It's interesting. I think, like, looking at different bands, like, if you think about a band like Strapping Young Lad, like, so like Devin Townsend composes everything.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Here it is. Here's the tune. This is it. This is complete. Pretty much play what's there.
Sure.
With some exception. I mean, he definitely wants people to put personality, but it's kind of all written out. And then you take something like Meshuggah, where like all the drum parts are pre-programmed, and then Tomas has to learn them. And it's like, here's this impossible drum part. Here, learn this. Like Frederick wrote the drum part for like Bleed, right? And then
Right.
Tomas has to go and learn it. And it's like, oh, crap, really?
Yeah.
But I guess the challenge is fun, but I mean, that's a different ball of wax, right? Like taking
Well,
it.
but Thomas also had his share of like stuff,
Oh, yeah.
That he's contributed to all of that as well, so I don't think it's just a one-sided thing in a lot of these bands. Some bands, maybe you get these real like dictatorship kind of things going on.
Right, right.
I've ran into that situation a couple of times with different people, where, because I'm not really interested in that, look, if you're gonna hand over your hard-earned cash on dollar, you know what I mean, to have me play exactly what you wrote,
Right.
I'll do that. But the first thing that I'm going to ask is like, why not just use the drum machine parts you already have? I mean, stuff
Right.
nowadays, you know what I mean? Like most of the time they're going to take my acoustic drums and turn it into, plugins anyway,
Right.
which we'll talk about that, but I don't let people do that to my drums.
Yeah, that's a whole nother.
We have a verbal agreement, but what I send you, like, yeah, EQ, put in there, compress, whatever you need to do. If you need to gate stuff to clean it up or whatever, but do not sound replace me with somebody else.
Right.
Because otherwise, why am I there?
Yeah, man.
But that's a whole other can of worms, but yeah, as far as the recording aspect, so I would ask guys all the time, like, hey, you're asking me to do this for specific reasons because you've liked what I've either done in the past, or you just want my name on your record for whatever you think it might.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I mean, it's not in the stream metal world, it's not really a lot anyway. Even if I have, or even if I was, or whatever, like one of the biggest drummers in that thing, it's a very small, piece of the pie to start squabbling over, really.
Yeah, but you're right, though. I mean, a lot of
with.
people do want to see that, right? So, I mean, I definitely
Right.
know people that are hiring guys because they'll get a couple names on the record and they figure it's good for
Yeah,
promotion,
yeah.
and obviously you're well respected. So if they see that, it's probably good for
Sure.
the artist. So, yeah.
But here's a funny story, and I won't mention names, but
Yeah.
I had a guy contact me, and I know his brother really well too, and so he contacted me. He was like, "Hey, got this project. I need a drummer. I had somebody else was doing it. He backed out. I need somebody kind of last minute. Would you be willing to do it?" I was like, "Yeah, but and like I said, I know his brother, and I know why his brother doesn't do stuff because, like, dude, the programming and the sound replacing, and it's got to be exactly what he wants. I mean, even down to like hi hat, open, close, how tight, like all of this stuff.
Oh, wow.
And he goes, "That's why I don't mess with him anymore. It's just like a lot of time for what it's worth, And I was like, "All right, yeah, sure." So I get on the horn with him months later, and he's like, "No, dude, as long as you respect the song and like, but feel free to be you." I was like, "Okay, cool." So I start getting the stuff, and it's complicated to say the least. You know what I mean? Like layer time, and I mean like. So I'm like, "Oh wow, this is cool." And he was like, "Look, man, you could just record it part by part, and I was, and send it to me, and I'm like, I would like to be able to learn it. I like because what happens if somebody says, 'Man, you guys are killer. Let's, come to the NAMM show and play, or do, we got to be able to play. Let me learn it while I have time to do it, So I'm sitting there and I'm adding my stuff. Not again where there's this beat, I'm playing that beat. Where there's this beat, I'm playing that beat, But I'm just coloring it how I want to color it, So I send in the first song, and man, I get back an email that is like it's literally like 150 to 200 and something, like nitpicky, and it had time codes like 00 semicolon 00 semicolon 001 to 00 semicolon 00 semicolon 003. Play hi-hat closed.
Oh.
5 to 7. Play hi-hat open.
Oh, my God.
And it eventually came, it came around. I invested like 2 or 3 months in this, and it came around to basically what he wanted me to do was exactly play his drum machine parts. So the next conversation we had was, "Look, man, here is my rate, and I'll be happy to do this for you anytime or whatever." And I never heard from him again.
Yeah. I mean, that's, first of all, that's super time consuming. Second of
Yeah.
all, why didn't you just lead with that? Because you probably would have said, well, that's what I don't want to do, really, unless we're, at some kind of agreement monetarily. That makes sense. But like, to write those kind of notes, have a hi-hat opening at 1.04, it's like, ooh, that's rough.
I mean, and I've gotten that a lot. I mean, it wasn't just one time. That's been, half a dozen times.
Right.
So I'm not out to, and like I said, you're going to pay my fee to do something like that. I'll do it for you.
Right.
Is it going to be worth it for your project? I don't know.
Yeah. what's it? DFH, Drum Kit from Hell. You use that
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that's what you want. Use that thing. Oh, that's funny.
I mean, that's what they're going to turn the acoustic tracks into anyway.
Right, because they're gonna sound replace them anyway.
I mean, what does it
Oh
matter?
man, that's rough. Well, why don't we, before we go back, because I want to go back earlier in your story, and let's say hello to a few people that are in the chat, just to see how the chat's populating, and just we'll say some hellos and then we'll jump back in, and so Bob Sears, first one in from New Hampshire. Bob Sears is a great drummer, student of mine, and he just got a brand new Tama kit. Beautiful, couple of brand new Tama kits, right, Bob? So he's hanging. Let's see. He said that he cared for the pythons and boas in college, I guess, in their biology department, maybe, or something. Wow. You cared for
cool.
like from the college, Bob, or were those your own? Let us know that. Larry Rizzo hanging with us. Larry Rizzo is always in the chat here. Joey Pinto from Staten Island hanging with us. Great drummer from Staten Island that I met in the park. I was walking my dog. He was playing on, I think he was playing on a swing set with his drumsticks. You know, playing.
Swing sets sound great.
Out in the nature, right? Just hitting whatever's there.
Yeah.
My student Lucia Seminara hanging with us. Hey, Lucia, how you doing? She's saying hello. Favicia hanging with us. John Fav, what's up? Fav in the house. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for hooking us up, Fav.
yeah, man. Fav's the best, man. By the way, Lucia she's a young drummer. She's 13. She's from New York here, and she has two questions for you. The first one is, who are some metal drummers that inspired you, and who would be some guitarists that inspired you?
Metal drummers. I mean, for me, early on, I mean, Lombardo, like I grew up with this stuff, right? So there wasn't like guys kind of, before all of this. So, I mean, we had Dave Lombardo, and then of course, Gene Coughlin, moving into like, Pete Sandoval was a big influence when I was, playing, being in bands, and I would see Morbid Angel play, and like, wow, out of all the guys doing this, like that's the guy.
Yeah.
But Steve from DSI, was a great drummer. But these are like later influences for me, like I didn't really start getting into metal drumming until I was in my teens.
Right.
I grew up on Billy Cobham and Tony Williams and Buddy Rich, and these guys being in the musical household.
Yeah.
There was so much music anyway, so those were the guys. Gad, Wacko Vinny, of course, like all of that stuff was alongside the metal drumming.
Yeah.
Guitar players, just in general, in my younger years, Steve Vai I liked a lot. Still love David Gilmour's stuff, all of that Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Even all the way to Yngwie. I mean, I kind of appreciate all of that, all of the different kinds of techniques and things that are, that happen. Chad Atkins, if anybody remembers Chad Atkins, Ripper.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's doing what all these metal guys are doing now 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, right. It's funny, by the way, that you mentioned Yngwie. I saw Yngwie, I think, in 1983. I was in high school.
Okay.
And he played
with Alcatraz or with Yngwie?
I think it was Yngwie. Like when did his record Rise come out?
I think 83, yeah.
Yeah. So he was touring that record.
83.
And it was L'Amour in Brooklyn, which is the club that my band was playing at.
Yep, I played there.
And yeah, man, and 62nd Street in Brooklyn. We were opening for Carnivore at the time. But
oh wow.
Yeah. So
I knew
Peter
that's what
Steele.
I haven't heard in a minute.
Yeah, right. So
wow.
I knew Peter Steele like as a kid, and
right on.
And my buddy became the guitar player for Carnivore, Mark Pivanetti, who later became the guitar player for the Crumbsuckers.
Crumbsuckers, right? Yeah.
But Yngwie played, and that was the loudest show I'd ever been to in my life, first of all, because Lemoore is pretty small, and
Yeah.
Yngwie's rig was just basically the entire back wall
The
was
whole
all
stage,
Marshall
yeah.
stacks, the whole stage. And it was just so freaking loud. But
Yep.
really impressive to see that band live anyway. It's pretty
That's
funny.
a different thing I noticed about like shows nowadays. All the guitar players are all going Kemper and Axe effects and stuff, and there's no sound coming off stage. And like if you're a fan, let's say in the front row, the only thing you're hearing is drums. I mean, because
Yeah.
the PA is, you know what I mean? And I don't know. I don't get this. To me, it's just not rock and roll. I mean, rock and roll to me is supposed to be like, it's loud in here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
All those shows, think about
It's-
that. Like back in those days, all those shows, like I would go see Anthrax. We opened for Anthrax too, but Anthrax would have a wall of amplifiers on stage. Testament,
Yep.
wall of amplifier. You know, it's like, and then all those bands that were playing like Biohazard and like all the early sort of thrash bands that were playing through
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Lemoore. You know,
Yeah.
who else was it? Nuclear Assault?
Yeah. Nuclear Assault. Another band.
Napalm Death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about Voivod? You ever see
Voivod? Oh my
Voivod
God,
through
yeah,
there?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, pretty funny.
I saw Voivod and Celtic Frost, I think, in '85 or something. It was, probably '85 at the Metroplex in Atlanta.
Oh, cool.
That's going back a while. That was a big skating rink that
Yeah.
they turned into a venue. Yeah. Pretty funny.
By the way, so and the guitarist of Anthrax I liked as a kid, but I also liked Charlie Benante a lot because he was the first one
Oh,
that I
yeah.
kind of heard, like, what's that tune called? Where he's doing sort of the triplet shuffle.
Oh,
Right, so
yeah,
that
right,
triplet
yeah.
feel with the
Yeah.
you know, with so it's so he's kind of got that shuffle thing happening in it, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. So, you know, of course, I wanted to learn that, and you know, learned all those tunes and how to play them because the double bass
Man,
playing
like-
just sounded different, you know.
Charlie, to me, I don't know. I mean, you know, everybody was going on about Lombardo and some other guys, you know, but I mean, Charlie, to me, like he had something. There was just a finesse there that a lot of other guys really didn't have at the time. I think Lombardo kind of developed it over time, but Charlie had it from the beginning.
Yeah.
And there's some stuff on that Among the Living record that's, I mean, the first official bomb blast is on Skeletons in the Closet. And I know it's more of a build up, but technically if you look at the notation, it's a bomb blast.
Right.
So, and then like some of the fastest double bass, like acoustic double bass ever recorded at the end of The Horror of It All. And it's short. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's a good 6 to 8 seconds. I mean, when you're playing that fast, it's got to be 225, 230.
Right.
It's up there. I mean, it's fast, 16 notes, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to me, like Charlie, and you know, and being friends all these years later, of course, you know, he's just had it, you know, for me. I would listen his drum sound at the time, specifically.
Right.
The changing of the hi-hats on each side, that would happen a lot, you know, he would switch from one side to the other. It was just like the things that he was doing that it was at the time that not really a lot of guys were doing.
You're right.
Yeah.
Like his sound was better than a lot of guys, and he
Yep.
sort of had a swing about him, like sort of like
Yeah,
this lilt,
yeah.
this lope, you know, where it just felt good. Like he had a great feel.
Yeah,
yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
like I said, definitely a finesse there that a lot of the other guys didn't have at the time.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Sure.
that's a whole rabbit hole we could go down right there. But I think that answered.
Oh yeah.
I think that answered Lucia. And by the way that I found out about Devin Townsend was Steve Vai. It's because you mentioned
Okay.
Steve Vai before, and Devin, when Devin was younger, he sang on Sex and Religion
Yeah.
on that record.
Yeah.
And his voice I was like, wow, who is this guy? He's got a really killer voice. And then later on, I heard his own thing, and I was like,
Yeah.
that's the same guy that was on, the Steve Vai record. And I was like, God. And that's when I got introduced to Gene Hoglan, because he was playing on the early Strapping On Lad stuff. Yeah, so it's kind of funny.
He's a monster too, man.
Yeah, he's another monster. Fav said this was going back to where I was probably saying that I was jealous that you play guitar. He said, Derek is one of those amazing musicians / drummers that can play right on guitar. Super talented. Indeed. Yeah, man.
Oh, thank you, Fav.
Frank Giordano hanging with us. Good to see you, Frank. Stephen Chamberlain from Canada. He's a good buddy of mine. We've done clinics together. He's a great jazz fusion drummer up in Canada. Stephen Chamberlain joining us. He's also an author as well as you, writing drum books. And so, Stephen, welcome. Glad you're hanging out. Pat Ross, he's in Ocala, Florida right now, saying hey. Pat Ross, another student of mine. He lives in Erie, Pennsylvania, but he's seeing the parents in Ocala, Florida. So Bob Sears said it was for the environmental professor. It was a zoo, lizards, birds, snakes, spiders, and bugs. Nice. So you took care of the snakes, I guess, Bob. Cool. Todd Mills hanging with us, just giving us horns. Very nice.
Todd.
Thanks for joining us, Todd. Let's see. John Gill up in Oneonta, New York, hanging with us. Great drummer, educator up there. Dave Clive from Dave Clive's Gretsch Museum, hanging with us. He's a avid Gretsch collector and a great drummer, funk drummer, good friend of mine for many years. John Fav just went, wow, Crumbsuckers came to my hometown, Baldwin, New York. Yeah, the Crumbsuckers, man. That was, they had an unfortunate incident in that band. Someone had passed, I think. And the tour that my buddy was on, I think had gotten cut short. Is that true?
I don't remember.
I think they had a loss.
I don't remember much about being in South Carolina, I was so isolated from a lot of stuff,
Right.
Again, I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, like the capital for the most part, but it wasn't, when I was in high school, I think it was 150,000 people in Columbia.
Wow.
Like now it's a lot, it's well over 1 million.
Right.
But back then, and if I wanted to see a show, I had to go to, first I had to find out about it through looking through the fanzines and going to the local record stores and whatnot. And then we had to get there, which was either Charlotte, which was an hour and a half away, or Atlanta, which was almost 4 hours away. But Atlanta's where everybody went.
Yeah. Wow.
So we were driving there to go see shows on school nights and driving all the way back,
Oh, man.
Crazy.
By the way, speaking of, my buddy who became the guitarist for Crumbsuckers, he was in Carnivore before that. He replaced the original Carnivore guitar player. But when we were opening for Carnivore at Lemoore, they were coming out with the sort of fur and spikes shoulder pad things, right?
Yeah.
And Pete Steele would throw raw meat into the audience. And they did a thing with an American flag. I just remember the whole scene. You know what's so funny is the contrast of they were playing, and then on another night it would be White Lion was playing. And it was White Lion was new to the scene, right? And their guitar player really had the whole Eddie Van Halen thing kind of down, sounded like Eddie a little bit.
That guy was good.
He was really good. Vito something.
Vito, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just
funny.
It was funny days, man.
Remember the Bullet Boys?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, I remember talking to Dave Lombardo a long time ago, and Dave Lombardo, I don't know whether he was taking the piss or whatever, I don't know, but he was like, man, that guy from the Bullet Boys, that guy, I can't remember his name, but he said his name. He goes, he plays in the Bullet Boys. He goes, that guy's killer.
Wow. That's funny.
I just thought it was so odd, like, okay. All right.
You know what band I was just, going down the band rabbit hole for another minute. There was a band called Talus that was really big when I was in high school. which was Billy Sheehan on bass.
Billy Sheehan. Yep.
Billy Sheehan would come out with that crazy organ MIDI rig, like like sort of medieval MIDI rig, and he would play bass, and the organ would follow his bass, right? It's this crazy rig, and so he would play the Firebird Suite on the bass during his solo, and they did that on that live record, right? And so it's like this classical stuff. He's doing all this classical stuff on the bass, and the organ is playing it, and it was double bass, drumming behind it. It was like very interesting. We had never heard anything like that, So Talus was big to us. And it was funny because, the drummer had like a traditional double bass kit with like, I think a single rack tom or 2 rack toms. And then on top of that, his rototoms. Like, so you couldn't see him because it was like 2 layers of tom-toms like in front of him. So it was like...
It's like the dude from Venom.
Yeah, exactly.
He had like 2 rows of toms.
Exactly.
Big concert toms.
It's like hiding behind the kit.
Hilarious.
Man.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool.
Those were the days, man.
Those were
the days.
Indeed, man. Those were the days. So
I saw Kiss. My brother took me. Well, was I 76? No, it had to be 78. I was 6 years old. I'm 72. So yeah, it was on the Dynasty tour. So it must have been maybe 79.
That. Dude, I saw that tour. So I was a little older.
That was like one of the first. Yeah, that was one of the first like real big shows that I remember going to. Like it was at the Carolina Coliseum, which I think is like 2250 capacity, 22,500 capacity.
Did Judas Priest open?
So no, it's Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh, okay. My show was Judas Priest open. Rob Halford came out on stage on a motorcycle.
Yep.
Rode out on stage, and I was with my mom, and I was like, "Mom, who's that?" Like, that's not Kiss, because I didn't know about warm-up bands. Like I didn't know there was going to be a different band playing.
Right.
Oh my God.
Too much. Yep.
Yeah, those were the days.
Crazy.
Actually, I met 2 of the members of Angel at that show. So, Angel. Greg Giuffria, the keyboard player, was there. And I met him, got his autograph, and he wasn't Punky Meadows, he was with a different one. Not the drummer, I don't remember the guy's name, but he was with another guy from that band. And there was a whole crowd around them. I didn't really know who they were. I got his autograph. But I found out later because I did listen to that band for a time during the Kiss days.
Right.
Yeah, pretty funny. And there's a Zappa tune about Punky Meadows. It's called Punky Whips It, and Bozio sings it. And it's about Bozio's crush on Punky Meadows' photo. Anyway. That's a whole nother story. We'll get back to that.
Bozio is another big influence too. I mean,
I
mean, people ask me about my influences all the time, and I'm like, dude, it's the usual suspects. It's the same guys that you hear, over and over and over again. And it's funny because some of the, if there's anybody like younger listening to us talk, they're like, what the hell are these guys talking about?
Exactly. They're like, who are these people?
I rediscovered this band Granicus. You remember Granicus?
No.
They were a band from Cleveland, Ohio, from like the late 60s, early 70s. And their drummer, his name will come to me in a minute. His name's Jim. It's funny because his brother is Jim Battaglia. His brother John Battaglia is a snake breeder.
Oh,
so I rediscovered this band, and I remember my brother having the album cover, if I do remember. And my wife and I rediscovered it on YouTube from listening to some other like unrelated 70s prog rock stuff, And this stuff comes on, and I'm listening to the drums, and I'm like, man, for 1973, I think when this came out, I was like, there's more double bass on this than I've heard on anything. Like,
wow.
Up until the mid 80s, really. I mean, there's some stuff going on, and I'm like, you have to really kind of listen, but so I've really been like digging on that. Like a lot of this kind of the older older progressive rock. There's another band named Lucifer's Friend. They were from Germany. Do you know this band?
I don't think so.
The singer eventually, John Dalton, he eventually went on to sing for, man, I'll think of it in a minute. She just passed recently.
Oh.
But another, like, a band that, like, you can listen to and hear everything from Slayer to Alice in Chains to, I mean, like, it's amazing the amount of influences that you'll hear on this one particular recording. And so kind of like, going back and rediscovering some of the stuff that I missed when I was younger, because I just barely missed it. My wife
Right.
and I, we're a little too young to have caught it, my brother, you know. Um, but even some of that stuff he doesn't remember, it's kind of this obscure kind of level of things that I've been really trying to follow lately. Going
That's
back
funny.
to trying to find musicians that were were playing for the art of playing as opposed to, to try to become some type of star or whatever. They were truly creating interesting music and crafting things that were odd and different from everybody else around them at the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was gonna mention Benante again, playing with SOD, and
Yep.
hearing that the tune "Milk" was like one of the early blasting things. Where I had seen an interview with him where he was talking about it, and
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh yeah, I had definitely heard that. I just didn't put that together. But
Right,
it's
right.
kind of interesting, that whole evolution, which can be a whole show in and of itself.
Well, I mean, even before then, I mean, like some of the Beastie Boys had blast beat stuff on it,
Right, that
you know,
that
even
early.
before then. Riot Fight. There's a band, A Social from
Yeah.
Sweden, I think, or maybe Norway. I don't remember. They released stuff in 80, 81, 82 that is straight on blasting. Like what
Right.
Charlie did actually technically isn't a blast beat, like notation wise. It's
Right, right.
it's it's basically a Slayer beat. He just moved the sound source.
Got it.
You know what I mean? So technically it's not a blast beat, but the one on Skeletons in the Closet is, right, because the notation is there. But going back to bands like A Social over there, I mean, that was, kick snare, kick snare, kick snare. I mean, alternating, blast beat stuff.
Right.
And all of that started in pretty much a European hardcore scene. I mean, there were bands, Discord and some other bands in, here in the States as well, that were doing that kind of like really angry hardcore, kind of vibe. But it was around, even pre Napalm Death. I mean, this precedes Napalm Death even by 5-6 years.
Right.
So there's stuff out there. I haven't found anything earlier than that particular A Social record. There's a lot of stuff around 84 that's coming out that's got, more blasting type stuff on it. But again, it's all in the hardcore realm for the most part.
Right, right.
It didn't bleed over into the metal world realistically, where it became a style until Napalm Death. And even Napalm Death is not really, then they weren't like a death metal band or an extreme metal band. They were like a hardcore grindcore band, right?
Right.
So they kind of changed over time as well. But that's where it kind of started, like with Napalm, with the metal scene. And then it started adapting. It started being, maneuvered into the songwriting of a lot of the metal guys here in the States, specifically Tampa,
Right.
Buffalo, New York, with Cannibal Corpse and Deicide having their start there,
Yeah.
for the most part. So, and then moving here from there. But Malevolent Creation, same thing. So yeah, there's a whole history there for sure. Just people just don't really know about it so much. It's never documented, so to speak.
Yeah. I wonder, like, the European stuff, it's almost like polkas on steroids. You know what I mean? Like they're coming
Yeah.
from like sort of a 2-beat background, in their music and stuff. And then I wonder if that evolution for them
Well,
was
that
organic.
that was, but this stuff more like A Social. I mean, it's straight up for 1 2 3 4 1 2 3
Right,
4
right,
1
right.
2 3 4 1 2 3 4. It's different than that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's straight on.
Yeah, yeah.
you know, so that's why I always say it's like that's like the first recorded example of kick snare, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
at those kind of tempos, you know, that you get out of the realm of the punk rock, you know,
Yeah.
beat
Tumpa,
and
tumpa,
into
tumpa,
the
tumpa.
realm of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah, you get
interesting.
out of the realm where you're playing 8 notes here, where you have to match everything up because it's too fast.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah,
That's
exactly.
that to me is where a crossover happens. Because technically, if you're playing like you know a Slayer beat,
Right.
right? You know that's I see a lot of guys doing this, but that to me is not the real thing. So you know when you get to a point where I mean, you know, you
Yeah.
kind of have to just transfer it over into the blast beat at some point, you know, to make it faster, so to speak. But
Right, right. And actually, I mean,
fun,
what's kind of cool is, you know, in your book, you know, you kind of you're paying homage to Johnny Rab, you know, for kind of making the fulcrum, the rim fulcrum stuff, or the
right,
gravity blast, for his notating the rim fulcrum stuff because it kind of had been kicking
right.
around, but he sort of made an academic work out of it where you could
Uh, Johnny pioneered all of that,
and
man. Like,
took
I
it
mean, there were other
to
guys that were doing
woo,
it,
yeah,
man. He's a Johnny. Hey, man, I love you. You're one of the best drummers on the planet. Like, people don't
yeah,
realize that about Johnny, man. Like, Johnny is a monster.
yeah.
You know, a great player. Same thing with John Fab. John Fab's a brilliant drummer.
Oh, he
You
is
know, there's so
totally.
down here. I mean, there's a lot of guys in Florida specifically. We're starting to get a lot of guys moving here. Carmen just moved here. Nico's down the street. Fab just moved here. Jason Bonham's here.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Horacio was here. He had a place in Miami for I don't know if he still does or not. I see he's spending a lot of time in Spain. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's been some guys down here, so it's like the good community now. Modern drummers down here, so
Right. Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
was surprised that Nico was down there. Carmine Appice had mentioned that to me. He's like, "Yeah, Nico's right down the road." I was like, "What?"
yeah, yeah. You, literally, we're all 10 minutes from each other.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and of
Um,
course, Nico's got a barbecue restaurant down here, Rock and Roll Ribs.
oh, wow.
So yeah,
I wasn't aware of that.
funny.
I'm going to have to
Oh
check
yeah,
that
no,
out.
he's had that for at least 12 years now, if not longer, 15 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Great barbecue. Absolutely amazing baby back ribs.
Wow.
Probably the best down here for sure.
That's awesome. Um,
How? I ask him all the time, like, dude, you're from the UK.
yeah, like, how did you do that?
What happened? You know, I don't know.
He just likes barbecue.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. Ray Levere just jumped in, hanging with us.
Ray, hey Ray.
Ray, man, what's up? And my buddy Rob Glick hanging with us. Yo, I owe you a call, Rob. I saw your text from the weekend about that recording from like the 90s. We got to check that out. So let's go back to a young Derek Roddy. Like when did you start? Like when did you get the bug? Or what was the moment that you were like, I want to play drums?
I think that I don't remember. I just remember Dad putting a drum kit under me on Christmas when I was 5, I think, and I just remember the stories that came afterward that they had to get something under me because I was beating the crap out of everything in the house, you know.
Oh my God.
At a really early age, and because my brother is 9 years older than me, like he was bringing all of this music, Kiss and Black Sabbath and Alice Cooper and all of this stuff into the house in conjunction with what my mom and dad already had. And then like you're seeing stuff on television at a young age. I fell in love with Donna Summers when I was like really young and ended up buying her like greatest hits. And I think, man, I wore that record out.
That answered like
playing
3
that
questions I
stuff.
had for later.
Oh man, I wore that thing to the bone. I had to rebuy it.
Wow.
You know, like I wore that and Kiss. I wore that stuff to the bone. I mean, Alice
Yeah.
Cooper too, Black
Yeah,
Sabbath
man.
too. But that Donna Summers record and like Destroyer, those were like
It's
those were like the two biggest ones for me, you know.
pretty funny. Like,
Yeah.
Gene had Donna. Well, he was. I think he dated her for a minute, but Gene Simmons had Donna Summer on his solo record
Yes.
with that Kiss solo
Yep.
record, right? Yeah.
They were dating for a while, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yeah.
During that time period. Yeah.
The Donna Summer record that you're talking about, which one was it? Was it that
Greatest Hits.
Oh, Greatest Hits. Okay.
It was it was a double fold out that had her sitting on top of a jukebox.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. Remember?
Yeah. And that
I remember it.
I'm trying to remember the tune because I've had to play these like over the years, but there's one tune. What's that?
On the radio.
Yeah, but you know what? The one that I thought was really cool was MacArthur Park.
Dim the Lights. MacArthur Park. That's a good one. Dim the Lights. That's another good one.
Yeah.
Sunset People. That's
Yeah.
another one. There's so many good ones that. Yeah, that's where my love for Playing Time came from.
Right,
you know?
right.
I mean, that stuff did have a live drummer on it,
Yeah.
and I'm sure a lot of it was tracked to probably a Lynn drum machine at the time, if you remember those.
Yeah,
most
man.
likely. My dad had a. It was funny. We were at the local music store. He met this local producer that was living in Columbia, and he had produced the Maurice Williams song "Stay."
Oh wow.
Right? You know, the high pitched voice.
Yeah.
So he had done that, and my dad was like, "Look, I got these songs I would like to record and maybe sell to, try to sell to Nashville." It was like my dad was into contracting. He was real estate, and he was a contractor, but doing the whole real estate thing,
Yeah.
and just wanted to record these songs, and that was going to be the end of it, But they got in the studio, and John, the producer, was like, "Look, you're not going to sell these songs. We're going to put these things. We're going to get them out. We're going to put them out." And he ended up getting on Billboard. He got,
Wow.
I don't remember where, maybe 16. I just remember him and Roy Clark being like side by side. And I thought that was when I was a kid. This was in maybe 82, 83?
Wow.
Somewhere in there.
So like on the Nashville charts?
Yeah, on Billboard.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and the country charts. So, and I remember we drove around to like several radio stations in South Carolina, like for like a month or two, and he was doing interviews, and like, I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I remember like being like in the studio when they were recording, and that was all Lynn drum machine.
Yeah. But what a great opportunity for you to like get a sort of snapshot into the industry a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean they had an SSL in there. I mean, as I was young, or actually that was probably a Neve console.
Yeah.
In there at the time, but yeah. So I grew up with that, and then the thing with my dad was it was like, I'm not going to put much time into music because there's no money in it,
Right.
And so now that was then when you actually could make money doing music. But,
Yeah, man.
He just thought that it was a lot of effort for little return based on what he was already doing. He was already building homes and making tens of thousands of dollars, that way, during that whole time period. So, yeah, he was doing well. So,
I mean, luckily he had the foresight to put the drums underneath you at the time. Which, by the way,
so he did that. And
was that like a student model kit, or was it a toy? Was it a real kit? What was that?
Well, all right. So this is a funny story. Christmas, it was a Sears and Roebuck. It was one of the nicer ones they had. It was kind of like a real kit, it had hardware
from the catalog,
its own hardware and stuff from the catalog. Yeah. And I woke up Christmas morning. There it is. I basically tore the thing up. So we had to box it up and take it to the store the next day. He got his money back, and we went right to Tri-City Music, which was the store in Columbia, South Carolina, to go to at the time. We went there, and he bought me a Royce kit.
Wow.
Which was like a CB700 knockoff,
yeah.
Whatever. Japanese made kit at the time.
That's hilarious.
Not even Chinese.
I picture him returning that thing to Sears, and they're like,
I remember going.
What happened to this thing?
I remember going. Yeah. I remember standing at the, at the customer service thing, the whole thing. And he was like, yeah, he tore this thing up in a matter of 24 hours.
Oh my God.
They gave him his money back. Yeah. Then we went to the music store.
And
But I
that's
was
when,
already playing Kiss,
right,
you know,
right.
like once that set up, I was going for it, you know.
You know, you may have been playing blast beats at 5 years old because, you
I mean,
know,
probably.
probably
Given my metabolism level when I was
hammer blast.
younger, you know, I run fast anyway. I run hot anyway as a kid, so the drumming definitely helped for sure. And then, you know, my brother being 9 years older than me, he wanted to be in a band, but he, you know, at the time, I guess he was almost even too young to play with some of the guys that he was looking up to. So
Right.
my cousin played bass, who's 5 years older than me, 4 years younger than my brother. And my brother and I had a band, and we were doing covers of Boston and Kansas and,
Cool.
you know, Kiss even and whatever, Leonard Skinner, Allman Brothers, Doobie Brothers, all that kind of stuff, Southern rock, basic kind of stuff. And we were playing at church and my mom's garden club meetings, and you know, we were playing all the time, just out in the yard on the weekends by the pool. You know, we
Right,
take our
right.
stuff out and play, and we get a whole bunch of people over. Yeah, we were all the time playing. Music was it was a big part of everything back then, you know.
Wow.
And even more so in the 70s and 60s, I would imagine, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God. But I mean, for, you know, for your youth growing up with that and having it, you know, having it all happening at such a young age, yeah, that's killer. That's really great.
Yeah,
And it
it was
shows.
fun.
I mean, it shows. By the way,
I
Scott
mean, yeah, by the
Johnson,
time I was in
Scott
Scott
Johnson,
Johnson,
he goes,
uh,
one take,
yeah.
Roddy, hey from South Carolina.
Yeah, man. Scott's a good friend. We've been buddies a long time. You know, it was funny because like even in middle school, I mean, yeah, I was playing to covers and stuff, but I would get together. By the time I got in middle school, there were bands in the neighborhood and people that were playing, you know, and I was playing, you know, trying to play original music when I was in middle school.
Right.
You know, I think that's a big difference in people nowadays. Like everybody wants to cover stuff. It's like same thing with the movies. Everybody wants to remake stuff. It's like all the ones and zero combinations have been used up and we got no other choice but just to keep remaking what we're doing, you know, like I don't know. I don't get it. Like, you know, but by the time I was in high school, like I said, I had my own original band and we were traveling to different cities and different states playing original music to people, you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a weird thing now to see now, you know, like what's going on with like the whole online thing and everybody like covering everything else and sound replacing their drums with other people's sounds. And guitar players buying this person's patch so they can sound like them. And I don't know. It's weird.
I mean,
Weird, different, I guess, you know?
yeah. I mean, there's definitely something to be said for trying to preserve original music, and there's less venues now for it, but you know,
Yeah.
that's all I do really is play original music with songwriters. I work for songwriters and bands.
Right.
So it's like I prefer that, you know, I don't want to really do top 40 gigs, you know, and it's never really been my thing. So I love playing original music. And you know, you and I come from, you know, I'm only a few years older. We come from a similar thing, like junior high school, the same thing. I had an original band called Aftermath, by the way, that we were writing songs and, you know, playing like, you know, whatever we could play at that age. Middle school, we played like street festivals. I remember we played Brooklyn College because they had a festival, so we played at the college. So, you know, going down that original music thing was what it was all about for me, you know.
I mean, you see some of it nowadays, you know. I think there's more of it that happens at the School of Rock type of places,
Yeah.
you know. Like you got it there, but I was just who was I talking to recently? They were telling me, man, he goes, not my neighborhood. There's like 4 or 5 bands just in my neighborhood of kids. I was like, well, your town is an oddity.
Yeah.
Because I'm not hearing that from people like, you know, I'm not hearing it as a consistent.
Yeah.
You know, it's an exception. It's not the norm of what what we usually hear, you know. It used to be the norm. Like you could go any, you know, midtown, anywhere America and just drive around and listen for bands. That's what we did.
Yeah.
I mean, and when we were in high school, we would just drive around neighborhoods in different areas of town, and we would discover bands that, I mean, we didn't care. Hey, is there a band playing here? Yeah, we right
Yeah,
up to the door.
exactly.
Didn't care. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really see people. I don't see that happening a lot these days. You know?
That's true. Thinking about like bands that were rehearsing in garages, like
Yeah.
if you heard a band and you were walking down the street, you would definitely walk up their driveway and go into their backyard and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" I did. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah,
But you know
totally.
what's cool? I mean, talking about this is that you're still doing it though, because like your band now, I mean, you're writing original music, you're playing original music. So
Yeah. That's why I said I feel like I'm a kid again, because like we come here a few times a week and we shred,
yeah,
and I've got the means to record and video and all of this stuff. So I mean, we just have a ball.
it's
You know,
awesome.
I mean, and honestly, Jim, to be honest, outside of these four walls, I really don't even care if people hear it, dude. I really don't. I have been
Right.
having such a good time with it, just myself, and just connecting with individuals, that like anything outside of these four walls, it really doesn't even matter.
Right.
That's why you don't really see me online a whole bunch, like promoting my stuff or whatever, every once in a while. And I usually do it more so for the guys that I'm playing with
Yeah.
than me, like, I mean, I appreciate it, but I spend too much time trying to enjoy my life, and I don't want to be spending like most of my existence in a 5x9 box.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It's, to me, it's just, there's so much life out there, and so I'd have to spend all of this amount of time just to draw attention for what?
Right. Right.
I don't know.
And you know what?
Thankfully, I don't have to do it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Thankfully, gosh, I mean, knock on wood.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm lucky.
the level of commitment and I mean, there's the joy, right? We do it because we love it, but there's also
Right.
this really deep commitment to trying to play at a very high level and bring it every time. And it's like,
Sure.
obviously to get to the top of like the scene that you're in, you can't do that without extreme amount of commitment and work, like sweat
Right,
equity, man.
right.
You got to work at it. And so, and it
Yeah.
shows. I mean, like, this thing, I, watching, watching videos of you playing this stuff, and I was getting hired to basically play on, on somebody's record to do metal drumming, which I hadn't done since I was younger, and I was like
Right,
trying to get
yeah.
my game on, and I was like, oh my God, I was like, they should just call Derek. I was like, I'm not gonna be able to do that, but it's the amount of
Yeah.
commitment and the fact that you took, this genre of drumming and broke it down into something that can be taught was really smart, because
You know how that started?
how that started.
That started, well, I always had an interest. I heard other guys, in the scene talking about doing a DVD and stuff, but nothing ever came to fruition, right? So I think I told you earlier, like the only job I've ever really had is working in a music store or a drum shop. In this case, it was Mars Music and then later Resurrection Drums down here.
Right.
But I constantly had teachers coming to me being like, "Hey, what's this whole blast beat thing about?" And I would tell them, and they would, and I would show them, and the kid's like, "Man, can you write that down?" So I would just write it down, notate it real quick. Here you go, that's for your student, whatever. So then they would come back and be like, "Okay, I see what's going on here, but what is this drummer doing? Because now he's asking me about this." And it would be like a bomb blast, which is just simply a blast with double bass, So I said, "Oh, you just add the left foot, put the snare on the one, move the left hand. There's a bomb blast." Oh, okay. So I'd notate that. And it just started from there. So I was like, man, I guess I just need to get this book done, And
Yeah.
I started just going for it, right? Writing it all down. And essentially that is a balance book.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's got a slight history of blast beats or whatever, but anytime you're alternating a hand and a foot, specifically if you start crossing them up, right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot kind of stuff, it then just turns into a balance exercise.
Right.
And they're perfect for that, because that is the number one issue that I think that most drummers that I watch, I watch that most guys, and especially non-double bass drummers, like the balance issue on non-double bass drummers is staggering sometimes when you stand behind a drummer and watch,
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes down to just the left foot being a human kickstand.
Yeah, they're leaning to that.
You know what I
hi-hat.
mean? Like it's just planted on the hi-hat, and then all of this is doing whatever, and you're never, able to maintain your balance in your core, which is where, if you're going to play double bass and if you're going to get into ostinatos and independence, you need to be able to, have that core there. So that's all that book really is about. That's a really common problem that I see with a lot of, not metal drummers. Metal drummers are pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Like you hardly ever hear a double bass drummer complaining about back problems.
Yeah.
And that's very easy to figure out, because if you watch most single bass drummers that play a double pedal, they put their bass drum straight on, right? To where the center of the kit is the bass drum. Well, the center of your body is not your right leg. It's your belly button.
Yeah.
So automatically, when you sit on a single bass drum drummer's kit to sit down to play the floor toms, to actually get yourself centered, you have to twist your spine.
Yeah.
And then to get the floor toms, you have to overextend. And then these guys wonder why they have back problems.
That's funny. I mean, that's the reason I play offset pedals, because offset pedals are set up like traditional double bass kit.
Right. Then they play in the middle.
Your snares
or you could just get your toms off the bass drum, move them to the center on a tom stand, and set up like a double bass kit.
Right,
just don't have the second bass drum.
Yeah.
That's the easiest solution for it. But But still, you still got guys that are playing like this. And then, like, if you look at their spine in an X-ray, it's literally
they're torqued. Yeah, it's really funny.
Yeah, it's torqued,
tweaked.
Yep,
tweaked and torqued.
Like this coffee's getting me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of cool. Knowing what inspired, doing the book.
Yeah.
And
it was just a necessity. I thought nobody had done it. And,
right.
Like up until that point, now there's a good bit of material out there. But at that time, nobody had any kind of instructional anything out about extreme metal drumming. So it just made sense.
And I think it also to people that, like to me, there's only one kind of music, right? It's good music. Omar Hakim actually said that on the last show. I'm stealing that from him. But, it's like there's a million different genres of music, and there's good music in every genre, I think, right? So, but the cool thing about having something like this, if an educator gets this, because, at some point, a kid's going to go, man, can you teach me, about blast beats? And some guy that knows nothing about it is going to be like, oh my God, he's going to panic. He's going to send the kid somewhere else or panic or whatever. And having a resource is such a great thing. But it also, I think it brings even a higher level of validity to the whole thing. You know what I mean? In the minds of people that don't listen to heavy music, right? So,
I think it did that too, because I mean, after I stopped playing and touring with extreme metal bands for the most part, I would go do clinics, and I mean, there were black shirts and pointy letters there, but it wasn't like touring in a metal band. It wasn't the whole audience, it was 20%, maybe 10%, sometimes 30%, maybe.
Yeah.
And so it was reaching a lot more people than just the people that I was playing for touring in my bands,
Right.
And that was the whole reason for Serpent's Rise not having vocals, because I got so sick of people telling me, man, I love the music, I just can't stand the vocals. That's why Serpent's Rise is instrumental.
Oh, wow. I mean,
so there's no excuse. I mean, it's still a little atonal and dissonant for a lot of people, but it really gets the point across about, the music in and of itself.
Right. It's about the music and
screamed at all the time.
Right. And I think, you've brought like this element, there's a percussion and some world music elements mixed in with it, which is brilliant. It's sort of like if you can merge, just music, and have all these different things coming together. I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
blast beats don't have to just be something that exists in bands like Hate Eternal. You know, it can
Yeah.
live in the progressive world. You know, it can
You know,
surface
and that
in
was
different
something too,
places.
when coming down to like the songwriting process that we were talking about earlier, you know, like with Hate Eternal, Eric and I kind of had this, like I was talking about earlier, we had this bond where like we played really well together, right? And it was kind of like one of these things that we wanted to be so aggressive and so angry that people, they really couldn't listen to it. Like if you can get through 8 songs of this, God bless you. You know what I mean? Because even like us, you know, we're playing it and we're like, man, I don't know, this is kind of intense. So it was either like a million miles an hour blast or a million miles an hour double bass. Like we didn't have like per se like slow parts, and even if they were like, you know, even if they did have a backbeat, like the double bass was just insane.
Yeah.
You know, so we kind of had this like agreement, like that we're not going to ever let up. You know, like
Yeah.
it's just going to be 100 miles an hour, pedal to the metal. You know, when you get in a car with somebody and they absolutely terrify you.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted to accomplish listening to Hate Eternal. You know what I
Wow.
mean? Like that.
I
That
think you
kind
did
of
that.
that's what we were intentionally set out to do, right?
Yeah.
And there were points in time where some riffs were just so good and so catchy that like to just play every note of the measure kind of did it disservice. But at the same time, if I was playing this big open backbeat, that what it feels like it should be there would really take away the intensity of what we were trying to create to begin with, right?
Right.
So that's how all of that started for me, where I started layering beats on top of blast beats
Right.
and things, because I would get torn in my head, like, man, yeah, I know that like this is what we said we were gonna do, but
The drummer in you keeps
you
it.
know, right? But I'm here. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be, but it could also be,
Right.
you know. So I'm hearing this big bass drum and like a separate snare drum. So I started experimenting, like, okay, so I'm playing this blast beat. So how am I gonna, you know, use my left foot for, you know, an alternate kick drum that's bigger sounding, and then I'll get to the snare from a hi-hat, and I can play this backbeat at the same time as doing like this blast beat stuff. So that's kind of like, you know, that where it started. It was out of like a musical decision, you know, like, okay, I know we said we're doing this, but this is cool too, you know. So that was just a way to kind of adapt and overcome that, you know, that musical dilemma, so to speak.
Also,
you know?
I mean, you do cool bell patterns over it. So you're the first time I heard somebody going like, ding, taka, ding, taka, ding, taka, ding, taka, ding, like, you know.
Yeah, I got kind of known for that. And there's a funny story about this too, which is interesting. A lot of people think, you know, oh, wow, that's so cool. That wasn't me trying to be clever or anything, right? As Hate Eternal started playing in front of bigger and bigger audiences, we were playing on bigger and bigger stages. So when you're playing, you know, 16 notes at 240 and you're standing a few feet away from each other on a small stage, it's pretty easy to lock,
Yeah.
you know, to stay in. Once I got a guitar player and a bass player he's 20 feet away from me and he's 20 feet away from me. We were a 3-piece. Now, all of a sudden, when you're playing that fast, it gets a little tricky.
Yeah.
You know, depending on the venue and like the reflective, you know, properties of the place and what's coming back. And it's a whole set of acoustic nightmare type of situations that you can find yourself in. So that's how that started. Giving him one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That way out there, he was hearing.
Yeah.
You know, so there was a constant. So no matter where we were, he would, you know, so that's how that started. And then I just started getting bored and I would just add accents, but I would always keep that one.
Yeah.
You know, so these guys on stage would know like where they're at in the song. Because like I
can't
said,
imagine like
you're playing 16 notes.
Yeah.
That fast, you know.
Like doing one of those huge European festivals or something where the stages are really big. And I mean, monitoring has got to be a nightmare for that. I mean, I guess you probably have some massive wedges next to you, but like,
Here's the thing about and being a sound guy myself, like growing up in building studios from the ground up a couple of times with friends and being involved in recording and all of that stuff, and running live sound for several bands, for the last 25 years. The one thing I have learned about monitors, if it's an issue, turn them off, right?
Yeah.
So my bands, for the most part, I don't even get them. I want a little bit of me so I don't overplay. But I can't stand it when somebody says, I can't hear on stage. What do you mean you can't hear? You have an amp that is 110 dB 4 feet behind you.
Yeah.
If you cannot hear that, it's because you're not listening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I get into these arguments all the time with musicians. Here's a funny story real quick. Did a local show here at a local brewery. This guy bought a brand new PA that he was going to get his own production company up and running. So he brought this brand new PA, put it in literally that day, figuring it out on the iPad. Pretty simple. I've worked on this kind of format before, but we're like 20 minutes past start time. And I go in the place and I'm like, what's going on here? Kev, can I help you out? What's up? And he's like, man, and the bass player's telling him that he can't hear himself in the monitor. Now he's got an SVT 810 or 810 behind him, right? So, and I'm watching it, and finally I say, hey, Kev, you want me to help you out real quick? Yeah, man, if you don't mind. Okay, cool. So I go to front of house. First thing I do is I turn all the monitors off. Kick drum. Kick, snare, toms, whatever, guitar. All right, give me your bass. All right, everything sound good up there? Like play a little bit of something. Okay, vocalist, you good? Can you hear yourself in the monitor? It's the only guy I turned on.
Right.
Okay, cool. Do you hear yourself good there? Fine. All right, you guys ready? Bam. Took like 7 minutes, right? When they got done playing, the bass player came over to me and said, man, that sounded great. What did you do? I said, I turned all your monitors off.
Nice. That's kind of funny, saying that. We had a sound guy recently putting the whole drum kit, I didn't know he did this, in the singer, the bass player, and the keyboard player's in-ears. The whole drum kit.
Right.
Like, loud. And I told the guy, I only just want a tiny little bit of kick. I don't want drums, and I can hear me. I'm in front of my drums. I don't need it. So my mix was great. Those guys were like, man, the drums are so loud. And so finally I said to the sound guy, I was like, you're putting me through their monitors? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, why? I was like, I'm right here. They can hear me. It's really funny, like
that's
monitoring.
Kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's there if you need it, but if you don't need it, don't use it.
Yeah.
Everybody's under this whole thing that it's got to sound magical on stage every night. That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
I love these guys too that like mark their amps, like their settings on their amp, as if their sound don't change when they go in any kind of different room.
Yeah, right.
My guitar player used to get so mad at me. At the end of the night when nobody was looking up, I'd walk by the amp and I would go. And the next day, I'd always hear it. Who's been messing with my amp? Damn it! It's like, but it forced him to. He learned. Wow, this isn't where it was. Where I remember it being last night. It sounds different. Like, duh.
Oh my God.
Like that. Yeah.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah, it's just one of those audio lessons. It's like you're not going to sound the same everywhere you go.
Right.
It's like you have to learn to know what you sound like and be able to adjust that for wherever you're at.
Yeah. Oh man, you mentioned
I don't
something.
think people don't put a lot of emphasis into their sound.
Right. I mean,
it's always like, oh, I'm going to buy Stuart Copeland's snare drum and I'm going to sound like Stuart, or I'm going to buy, this birch shell or this maple shell, or I'm going to go, there's a guitar player, I'm going to go buy, a modified Sedano, because that's what Eddie used in the early days. And I'll sound like Eddie, not realizing that they're just going to sound like them. No matter what they buy.
Isn't it funny? Like I have a thing with students that play double bass where they're always like, I'm always like, listen, it comes down to hours on the kit and the work. Put in the work, and they'll be like, oh, I bought a different double bass pedal because this one's gonna make me fast. And then they sell that one and they buy another one, and they're like, I just bought these new extended footboard direct drive, double bass pedal. This one's going to make me really fast. And it's like, no. You're going to practice and you're going to get it together. And then you're going to get your speed or whatever it is, whatever skill you're working on. It's not the pedal.
The pedal shouldn't even matter. I mean,
right.
You should be able to do all of this stuff on the floor.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look at what guys were playing with, in the early days,
I love speakings. I still love them.
I was going to say, like, I mean, I don't think there were any, there were Camco chain drive pedals maybe in the 80s.
I had those too. That's what I upgraded to.
Yeah.
But they were super light.
They were really
light.
They
had that really thin chain, and they had this really light kind of feel about them. I liked them a lot. I still have Camcos. I've got a couple sets of them.
Yeah, I had a pair of those in a trap case with my snare and my cymbals, and they busted the window out of the back of my car and stole the trap case in Manhattan. Like, I mean, it was a long time ago, but those are my Camcos. Gone, cymbals gone, snare drum gone, windshield gone.
Happen.
Yeah.
Yep. I've had gear disappear on the road. That blows. That's really the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah, that's rough.
It really is. Whole set of cymbals gone.
Yeah.
On a Hate Eternal tour.
Oh, God.
Yep. I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the whole thing gone. Oh, God. And the tom from my kit, from my Signias.
Oh, jeez.
Yep. Ugh. Too funny. I eventually got, here's another funny story. I eventually got that tom replaced. Who was working at Premiere at the time? Can't remember. Might have been Hibbs. I think it was Joe Hibbs.
Hibbs,
so he got me a new tom. And then, like, not 2 months later, I had gotten my first sonar kit, or at least from my first sonar kit from Sonar, and I put that kit into storage. And a friend of mine asked me, "Hey, I need to borrow 12-inch tom. I'm doing this session." So I let him borrow the tom, and I never saw him again. He like disappeared with that same drum that got stolen, like disappeared. Not 2 months later or 3 months later.
Oh my God! You just had to stop using 12-inch toms. That's it.
I need to go back to the 11s that Tamo was making back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. Man, I wanted to I just wanted to pivot on one thing that you mentioned a while back about the vocals. Mm-hmm. So what's kind of funny, and this is, everybody's got different taste. My ear, I really like Meshuggah, right? I've always liked them. I started listening to them a long time ago. To me, right. And harsh vocals are a funny thing, right? There's certain sound to certain guys, and and also, I mean, if you think about vocalists, we can even go far back to think about Merciful Fate. King Diamond's vocal stylings are a little bit different than, where he had that weird high falsetto.
Than most anybody.
than anybody on the planet. And then he would have that really low thing, and then he would have the really high falsetto weird, kind of thing. And it was nasally kind of high falsetto. And then, but then the thrash bands, their vocals kind of, if you look at Anthrax or something, there's a melodic element in there. And then there's some heavy stuff, but it was more melodic almost, right? I mean, even Metallica and all these bands that were coming out of the sort of the thrash era, and then there were the bands like Napalm Death, where it was more just screamo kind of stuff, right? Like guttural-ish, right?
Well, the screaming stuff kind of started with the hardcore movement again, and then you had the death metal vocals. That pretty much came from Chuck and Death.
Right.
It wasn't really that was the first time where it got that it went there, oh, he went there. Oh yeah, he went there, that was probably the first time that happened in the stream metal music at the time.
And it seems like there's sort of for lack of a better term, sort of like a Cookie Monster sort of sound.
Yep.
Where it's very here, kind of thing. And then,
yeah.
But then the Meshuggah vocals are really weird because I feel like they're so distorted that it sounds like a distorted guitar in his voice.
Right. Well, I think in a lot of this, I think the intention was the voice to be its own kind of instrument.
Yeah.
so to speak, if that makes sense. I think that's kind of where,
And
because like, okay, so a band like Obituary,
Right.
right? So their first record has no lyrics. It's just him blah 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 blah.
right,
You
right.
know, I mean, he's just whatever making noises, So I think that was kind of part of the allure of it, and earlier on you kind of had a diverse group of people kind of doing that. Now this is going beyond like Metallica and Slayer.
Right.
This is more of the Cookie Monster
Yeah.
death metal stuff. When you start talking about guys like David Vincent from
Right.
Morbid Angel or Glenn Benton from Deicide,
Right.
John from Obituary. So yeah, I mean, and all those guys, they kind of all had their individual thing, their individual kind of thing, style, the
Right.
thing that they did. Like David was all about pronunciation.
Yeah.
Glenn was about at least during that time period, he had the range. He could do the real high, the mids. He could do that real low guttural stuff.
Yeah.
So everybody kind of had their own formula for doing it. And then of course, as the music got copied and copied and copied and copied and copied,
Right.
now you kind of ended up with the stereotypical, where you put on any heavy band and you kind of hear the same vocalist.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be slight differences in tonality, and there might be a couple of guys that stand out from the pack. But it seems like when at the infancy of this, like there was more individuality put into into their art.
Right.
Less trying to copy and more trying to be individual.
Yeah.
Be different than everybody else around.
Yeah.
Well, they're doing that, so we're going to do this.
Right. Right.
You know?
And like
I intentionally did that with my own drumming when I heard Sean Reinert for the first time, because I was playing a lot like that. Yeah, I had the same influences, Vinny and Gad and Weckel, and I was in my band in South Carolina playing extreme, like fast double bass and blast beat stuff, but also using splash cymbals and ghost notes and something other than flams and paradiddles and different types of stickings and things. And when I heard Sean Reinert, I was literally mad. I mean, I was like, damn, that means I have to change what I'm doing. That's the first thing that went through my head. Wow. Right. So then I went the opposite direction, where that's kind of like the Hate Eternal stuff we were talking about. It's just going to be nothing but I'm just going to out endurance everybody. And that was like my goal.
And I think you succeeded for a long time.
Yeah. At the time. Yeah, I did. I mean, I still don't see a lot of guys covering my stuff. I see guys covering Nile and covering like some other drummers that have been in Nile and some other bands, Behemoth and some of this stuff. But I very rarely see guys covering my stuff. I see people talking about it, people not covering my stuff. It's like, and it's like I said, it was just something that I set out to do. I didn't want to be like somebody else. I didn't want to because he had just gotten his name on a record and that was coming out, and I was working on a record coming up too, and I was like, I don't want to be known as the guy that copied this dude.
Yeah.
So it was an actual decision I made,
And that drives the work ethic. I mean, because you have an incredible work ethic, and it's like, you're trying to carve out your own thing, and then.
But honestly, Jim, it was just because I played a lot. Like I was saying here about playing with these guys all the time. I've always kind of been like that, and
yeah.
I moved down to Florida to play with Malevolent Creation, and all of those guys are here in town. We played 4 nights a week.
Wow. That's great.
I mean, we practiced all the time. I mean, it was for some of the members, it was an excuse to come party. But for me, I took it pretty serious because I knew that I knew what I was playing at the time. I was like, there's not too many people doing this, and nobody doing it the way I'm doing it. And pulling, these other resources, playing left foot, instrument parts during blast beats because I saw Horacio. And I thought, wow, I could drag that into the extreme metal thing. Now, I didn't want to go be in a Latin band because I saw Horacio. I just thought to myself, wow. I looked for a different sound source, which came down to the Ribbon Crasher because the cowbells and woodblocks had been done. So I was like, well, let me find some other sound. So I used a Ribbon Crasher and just brought that into the extreme metal thing again. Like if another out of necessity because this got old. Ding, 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 ding. So
Right.
okay, let me find something else. If I can play the guitar line, blasting with my left foot with that instrument, something that's specifically like the ribbon crusher that cuts.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't even have to mic that thing. You hear it at the back of a 5,000 capacity room. It's like, you know, so like that kind of stuff. Like I would pull influences. I'm not saying that I wasn't, influenced from people, but the last thing I wanted to do was to flat out copy somebody.
Right, right. The other thing, I mean, also, you have a lot of power in your playing, and there's definitely, guys that are using triggers. I understand using triggers to sort of complement sound, but if it's the only way to get your sound out, because there's some guys where they're playing so light, where it's just.
Yeah.
So if the triggers aren't on, you don't really hear it, right? So, but a guy like yourself,
the idea of having the control.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I get the idea behind that, and I've had this. I did a video not too long ago, and somebody made a comment about, it just looks like you're expending so much energy. And then I thought to I made a reply, and I was like, well, how much energy are you willing to sacrifice? I mean, this music, it needs a little bit to fuel the music. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
It just can't be all about control, and that's where a lot of guys are losing me, because like you said, I don't remember the last time. There are a couple of drummers, but doing all of these metal fests the last 5 to 7 years with Nader Sadek has given me an opportunity to see a lot of the like newer guys that are playing. And
Yeah.
I'm not like ragging on these guys, because the technique is beautiful and they're brilliant players.
Yeah.
But I can't hear they can't project their sound, more than 5 feet from their kit. Like I'm on the side of the stage and I'm seeing them, but all I'm hearing is cymbals.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, all right, well, like at what point are you sacrificing what the music is supposed to be for technique?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there kind of for me, there has to be a balance. Like I say, a lot of times I sacrifice speed for sound a lot, because I don't really care how fast something is. I just care whether it's aggressive enough to warrant being there in the first place.
Right.
Like blasting for just the sake of blasting. And, like some of these guys, it's all perfect. And, like they're almost yawning and, like trying to show off how effortless it is for them. But then like your music is just, it doesn't do anything for me. Like I could care less about how easy you make this look, because there's no energy in the music now.
Right.
Like it needs to be something there,
Yeah.
So I don't understand like all of this idea that you have to take all of the energy out of drumming, because all of the effort,
I mean,
like I didn't start doing this style of music because I wanted it to be easy. I mean, it's like doing a show. The one thing that I could equate this to, like doing a show, playing this kind of music, especially something like Hate Eternal or Nile or whatever, it's literally like knowing you're going to get in a fight with the schoolyard bully when you go to lunch. It's that same feeling. You know what I mean? It's like, do I go outside? Like, is this kid going to punch me in the mouth and take my lunch money, or am I going to stand up for myself? I mean, and that's literally the feeling that's like, it shouldn't be about like, oh, I'm going to go out there and nail this. And, to me, it just makes the music lifeless.
Right, right.
I don't know. It just, maybe I'm doing it for a different reason. Maybe that, I don't know. Maybe that's why a lot of new metal doesn't connect with me.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, the raw energy is exciting. It's like it brings it for the audience, and it brings it for the guys on stage.
And I love hearing the mistakes. I love that. Like I can
Right.
go back and listen to records and hear a drummer put even something like not even a mistake, right? How many records can you go back and listen to recorded in the 60s, 70s, 50s even, where a drummer finishes the take and he puts his
Yeah.
You can hear it. You know what I mean? Like nowadays, all that stuff is edited out.
Oh,
like
I
it's
know.
so easy to do with a computer. You just pull it out, whatever, it's gone.
Yeah.
Like, man, that stuff adds. It doesn't detract. I don't know why people think this stuff detracts from what's going on there. That so much so that like, oh, we got to edit that out of there.
Yeah, like a rim,
You know what I mean?
rim or a stick click that happens spontaneously. When we hear that stuff from
Right.
old records, it's like, oh shit, that was so cool. You know?
Right. That's the thing that stands out.
Yeah. Oh, that's so
You
funny.
know, I mean, it's I don't know. There's a whole need for perfection, especially in metal music, man. It's like, I've said this before and metal guys get mad at me, but for a style of music that's supposed to be so real, I've never seen so much fakery.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
even the drum play alongs and stuff that people are doing are not real, you know? It's like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I,
Well,
I guess I'm that get off my lawn type.
you're bringing it and you're keeping it real, you know? So got to
I
appreciate that.
guess. I mean, and I think that's something that people subconsciously, like, they look for real, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I think of that as like the death of music, really. You know what I mean? Like when MTV stopped playing videos, stopped playing music videos. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that people were fed up with their music not being real, like
Yeah.
the stuff being fed to them on MTV and whatnot, on the radio. People
Right.
started figuring out that this music is not real, you know. So then, like, the greater, but I'm not saying everybody, but just the greater public, right? So then they start looking for something, something that they connect with, because the music just isn't doing it anymore, and they don't know why. They can't figure out why they're watching more TV than they're listening to music. And the reason for that is in the name, reality television.
Yeah.
Like, people were looking for something real, and they thought for an entire decade that what they were watching in reality television was real. And then they figured out that's not real. Right?
Yeah.
So then that died. Like, because there's not really much reality television anymore, so much as it is everybody's moved to the streaming, the podcast, these real-time interviews where they're getting real information. Again,
Yeah.
it's that search for, something that connects. And I think that people don't realize it. Like, it's like technology has ruined our connection with the natural world. And you can ask any cop on the face of the planet what happens on a full moon. You know what I mean? Like, we're still connected to all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
We just don't acknowledge it because technology has given us the means to not need to, right?
Yeah.
So I just think there's a real primal connection that is there for human beings to latch on to something real and tangible. And because music and television and media and everything is so manufactured and mass produced, it just leaves us so empty that we're constantly looking for validation on this, 5x9 box.
That's right.
It's just a strange time to be living in, man. It's like, I don't know. It's just, I think that more people are starting to figure it out, specifically musicians, because you do see a big swing of people coming back to the side of, like, I want to hear what my snare drum sounds like,
Yeah.
And I've had to fight with producers. I mean, I've given guys their money back because the producer is like, man, I just, at the end of the day, he didn't know what to do with acoustic drums. And I was like, all right, here's your money back. Don't use my tracks. Find somebody else to do it, because I don't want that. Why have me on it?
Right. Yeah.
It's just something about that realism. I want to be me. I don't need to be anybody else.
That's integrity right there. It's like, if they're going to shove you on a record and then replace everything, it's not you anymore on the record, right?
Why have me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Back, dude. Fine.
By the way, I missed Stacy
so
Keenan
weird.
was with us, so I just wanted to mention, hey Stacy, she was hanging in on the chat, and Steve Balgoyan up in Colorado hanging with us.
That name sounds familiar.
Steve Balgoyan's a great drummer up in the Colorado area. So you know what I think we should do? I want to ask you about, your pythons. So, but I think we should give away the drumsticks.
Give them away.
Let's do it. So let me pull up that. I mean, the person might not be in here who wins, but I think we should do it.
Do it.
So let me just see what we got here. So, just making sure that it actually ended. Yes, it ended. All right. I'm going to click on, let's see, here we go. Dashboard. Ready to award. There were 519 entries to win the sticks. That's pretty
Wow,
good.
cool.
All right, here we go. We're going to click it. All right, we have a winner. So this person, their email address doesn't include their name. So I'm going to send it to them, but it was somebody from Iowa, I believe, won the sticks. So you won 6
Okay.
pairs of Derek Roddy Vader drumsticks, which is awesome. Thanks to Vader for doing that. And yeah, man. So that's one of the
Right on.
I think more people entered your stick giveaway than entered. I gave away a $500 video switcher recently.
Oh, wow.
And more people entered on the stick giveaway, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, people need sticks.
Yeah, man. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So so I'll send that email out, and we'll get you all hooked up with your drumsticks. And yeah, that was awesome. All right, cool. So
Cool.
I could definitely keep going on some. I have one other technique related question before we jump into snakes. So one thing I notice is, so like when you're doing let's say an alternate bell pattern, you're doing pumping, like molar pumping motions, right? And I would say, again, using an efficient stroke, but still a powerful stroke. And you talk about using rebound and free strokes where you're really, letting the stick do some work, but you still have to play those strokes. There's still wrist involvement. There's rebound, but you're still using, really good technique. And that translates into good, big sound, really good sound, not tiny little motions that no one can hear. And then the other thing I notice is that when you're doing blasting, when your left hand is on the snare drum, your pointer finger comes out from your fulcrum kind of pretty far, and you get a lot of finger involvement, and you get a really big sound, and it's really quick.
Right.
But you're getting really solid notes. And what I'm wondering is, so you get sort of a French grip, like your thumbs up on top, your pointer fingers kind of out a little bit, and then your other 3 fingers are doing a lot of that control work, but you're also assisting with the wrist, right? Because you're getting a really big sound. But then I notice when you go the other side, your right hand has a different fulcrum, kind of. Less of the pointer finger coming out.
Right.
So I was wondering, like, is that because your right hand's your primary hand, like yin and yang, sort of lefty righty thing?
It's the sound thing.
Oh.
Yeah. A lot of times, remember how we was talking about with the members, like I would have to accent the bell.
Yeah.
So sometimes with earplugs, things can kind of get muddy. And when you're playing fast, sometimes that snare drum can just turn into and you're not really hearing that like the top end of it. You know? So I'm simply muting the stick, and by adding mass when I put my finger on it, and that way I'm adding mass to the stick, it like puts a point on top of the note. Like, I don't know if you can hear this or not. Let me see. Like, this is my counter, right? But this is like open-handed. So if I put my finger on top of it, hear the tonal change, open, finger.
Yeah, points, right, makes it more pointed.
Right, it doesn't change the pitch, but it goes from like a donk, donk, donk to a tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
And it does the same thing for the drum. So if you see me doing that, that's typically because I'm not hearing the top end. Now with the right hand, typically when I would do that, if I'm ever going from this, which would be like a single foot blast alternating, and if I ever come over to the right side, I'm going to be playing double bass.
Right.
So I don't have to focus on the sound so much with the snare. I'm focusing more on making sure those notes are lining up. So I don't really think about the snare so much. Plus I'm heavy dominant with my right hand, so the volume level stays pretty consistent, here while I'm playing double bass, But here it's harder.
Yeah.
So sometimes you'll see me doing that sometimes. Sometimes I don't. This depends on how well I can hear.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I
But
was
all of my
wondering
playing
about that.
pretty much comes from my shoulders
Yeah.
and my wrist. Cause I mean, there is a little bit of finger, like when I get to the ride cymbal, you know, like if I'm
Right.
playing a part that's like, and I really want that nice articulation, that kind of light kind of ride sound, you know. A lot of times when I'm playing, I'm playing the ride cymbal with like the whole shank of the, so it's more aggressive. You get more of that wash in it, you know. But yeah, I just kind of tailor my sound around just trying to play consistent. I try to play lighter on the slow stuff and slightly harder on the fast stuff, just so I can keep myself in balance, you know,
Yeah.
and not have to rely on a sound engineer or something, you know, to balance me out. Like I learned from growing up in a recording studio and running sound for other drummers, you know, what not to do in those situations, just to make, you know, an engineer's job easier, you know.
Right.
Not have to ride the snare fader a whole session. I mean, now it's all automated. It doesn't matter, but you know,
Right.
that's where it started for me, at least.
Oh, very cool.
It's all about the sound.
Yeah,
You
man.
know? I don't know if you saw that video I did recently, you know, about how your grip really will change your sound more than changing material or changing a drum head or whatever. Because I can hit this drum 1,000 ways. Here's 2.
Yeah.
You know, sounds like a birch drum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like a maple drum.
Yeah.
I didn't change anything. It changed my grip. You know, it's like, so people don't, when I said earlier, people don't realize how much of their sound comes from them.
Yeah.
You know, all of us, and I'm a gear nut too. I got more gear and I know what to do with. More like a hole in the head, I need more gear, you know? I get it. I get that part of it. But I don't think that any of this gear is going to change my sound.
Right. Right.
I had a guy, Gus Rios. He's another extreme metal drummer, pretty well known. He lives here in town. He was doing a record. And he would say, hey, man, I need a good 10-lug snare drum. I don't have anything that's like high end. You know, can I borrow something? Come over. I know you got some stuff. It's like, yeah, what do you want? He goes, I don't know. Just pick out a few and we'll pick the best one. Okay, cool. Grab a maple, a bronze, a copper, an aluminum, a steel, you know, maybe a bamboo or something weird, you know. And he's like, he comes over and he's like, all right, man, just play a couple of them and I'll just pick one. And after about the third drum, he just looks at me deadpan like, dude, with you playing those things, they all sound exactly the same, dude. Just give me one of them. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
because they were all tuned in the same range and they're all 6x14.
And you're hitting the
It wasn't
same.
like I was playing a piccolo drum,
Yeah.
you know, versus an 8-inch, you know. So they're all kind of basically the same construction per se, you know, size, heads, tuning range, whatever.
Yeah.
But he was like, literally, dude, I cannot tell a difference in any of those drums. Just give me one.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a testament to, you know, your consistency and your touch, you know. So
But that's every drummer, you know.
that's right.
I know guys that, you know, same thing with guitar players. Like there's a couple of friends of mine that are brilliant guitar players. Absolutely brilliant. They just don't sound that great.
Right.
They're constantly on the search for gear and whatever. And like, they'll bring an amp over here and they'll play through it. I'm like, God, that amp doesn't sound that great. And then like when they go to use the restroom or go to talk to their wife on the phone outside, I'll plug in and be like, man, this thing sounds great. Why doesn't it sound like that when they play it? You know, they just don't realize that it comes from here and here.
Yeah.
You know, it's I don't know.
I play with this guitar player, this guy Frank Ferrara, and every time we play, people go up to me and they're like, man, what kind of guitar is that? And it's like, what kind of amp is that? And then I'll lean over and go, it's not the guitar. It's his hands.
Yeah.
It's his hands.
Yep.
You give him any guitar, he's going to sound just like that, you know?
Yeah, what did Ted Nugent say? He was like, I couldn't wait to play on Eddie Van Halen's rig, only to realize I sounded like Ted Nugent playing on Eddie Van Halen's rig.
That's funny.
You know?
Yeah, man.
So,
Oh, man. I mean, you should pretty much be able to sit on, you know, any drum set and still sound like you. So,
right. Or still be able to convey your message.
Right,
you know,
right.
whether
Yeah,
it, You know, 'cause, I mean, obviously, if you get stuck with a bunk kit, you know, or whatever, it's, you know, and we've all been there. I've been to countries where I've had mismatched kick drums and they weren't even the same brand and different sizes. And,
Yep.
you know, like That can be tough to get around. But that, again, that just comes back to like if you can do it on the floor, and if you can get the sound that you're hearing in your head on a table, because that's really what it comes down to. Like people don't spend enough time playing on things that aren't their drums or aren't
Right.
an electric kit or aren't just a pad.
Yeah.
You know, like but if you can like when I was young, my grandmother's 72 Nova sounded ridiculous. Like the just stomping your foot on the floor in this thing was like the best kick drum on earth. I
like
swear to you.
Dum, dum.
I mean, like
Solid.
and just being in a car, the dash,
Right.
you know, and if you can achieve your sound there, the drum kit don't matter.
Yeah.
No,
That's funny.
That's irrelevant.
By the way, speaking of bass drum, do you play into the drum, like burying the beaters? Do you play out of the drum, like constant release kind of approach, or like a combination?
It depends.
Yeah.
Again, it depends on the sound I'm going for. Naturally, my left foot always sounds better, and I think that's because it's always more of an open stroke where I kind of dig a little more on my right foot. But I
Yeah.
can change bass drums, and the left one still sounds better.
Yeah.
It's always been like that, you know. And it just comes down to the stroke, I think, you know.
Yeah. That's true. Like sometimes punching accents, I'll push the beater into the head
Yep.
to give it some
Yep.
staccato, things. But, other times like regular groove playing, I like playing sort of out of the drum and letting it really come back
So
and
here's
just get a
something
big
about
tone.
Bonham
Yeah.
that I never really heard anybody talk about this before. Everybody just talked about, oh my God, Bonham's foot, how fast his foot was. I don't think it's really that his foot was so fast. It's this that he was controlling the sustain of the notes. Like when he would play, those notes were tighter and quicker than the
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
Right.
he wasn't trying to play like every one of those strokes, like with the, drummers, we get caught up in this, like, oh, I got to play in front of mirrors and everything's got to be the same.
Yeah. Every note's the same.
That's the fastest way to lose your identity as a drummer. You know what I mean? Like, don't do that.
Yeah. To get homogenized.
Stop that, you know? Yeah. So, but that's something that like people don't talk about with him was like the amount of articulation that was really there. Like there was so much more going on than, oh, he just had a fast foot.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah.
And there's a lot of drummers like that, you know? I mean, you look at a guy like Virgil. Like Virgil's a drummer you can recognize instantly by his sound.
Yeah.
Not just his drum sound, but a simple sound.
Yeah.
You know, and Virgil hits away. I mean, Virgil's been here. Like when he's in town, I'll let him come here and cut loose on my stuff, leave him for a while, and like you can tell that it's Virgil. Even if he's sitting on my kit, you know it's him.
Yeah.
He can stand outside the door and go, "That's Virgil playing drums." Like, you know.
Yeah.
It's just there's something about that identity, you know.
Yep.
And he even switched drum companies, and he still sounds the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah, there are qualities that, you know, there are things that DW drums have. You could tune DW drums lower because of how they're made.
Yeah.
You know, but he doesn't really tune lower. You know, he still stays in that same range that he was in on the Pearl kit. You know.
Yeah.
So to me, he just sounds like Virgil. It doesn't matter what he plays. You know.
Yeah, man.
Same thing with Vinny Cauda. You know, Vinny's like,
Definitely.
the amount of records that Vinny's been on that he probably played different drum kits on, you know, but it all still sounds like Vinny.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
I think that's the emphasis that people need to have is, you know, you are your sound. You know, work on you. Work your sound from here first. Like the head's cool, whatever, the type of drum cool, whatever. You know, we're all going to have our preferences for that stuff, but start here.
Yeah.
Get on that dashboard.
Yeah.
Get in your car on the dashboard, and if you can execute your drum parts there, you can do it anywhere.
Yeah. Simon, same thing, man. You always know it's Simon. You know his sound. You know
his sound immediately.
Billy,
his touch,
same thing.
Billy, another one.
Yeah.
Billy's he's an example of a guy that, like, that's kind of where I learned the whole. Okay, so when you're playing the blast beat, right, and if you go into a tom roll playing 16th notes, if you're playing really open, especially if you have a really openly tuned kit, like a maple kit that's really singing, and you're going up into those toms, it just kind of just whitewashes around, But well, Billy came around the toms. It wasn't just, I mean, it was, you know what I mean?
Totally.
That's unique to Billy. I mean, there are other drummers that do that. This is the same thing with like Phil Collins, even like that Phil in Coming in the Air Tonight, in the air or whatever, that that it wouldn't sound like that. I mean, yeah, there's a gated reverb on there, whatever, but like when I play that lick, it's too open. Like for my natural grip, I have to intentionally really choke it up, to get that sound, to get that vibe of it. It's like if I just try to do it the way I would do it on my kit, it's not the same.
Yeah, 100%. Like,
so I have to change my playing to sound like that, not drum kits.
Yeah.
Like I can get that sound on this kit. I don't need to change kits. Just got to change the grip.
That's another guy who's got, a sound that's like so unique, to him.
Yeah.
I mean, Stuart Copeland.
And again, it's not because of the concert in the toms either. I mean, people
Yeah.
automatically think, oh, he sounded that way because of the concert toms, not realizing that a lot of stuff he recorded was done on a double-headed kit.
Yeah.
So, he just sounds like that.
Yeah. One of the, I mean, I did a Phil book a few years ago. I should send you a copy of it. And I did some tribute pages. And so I did a tribute page to Phil Collins because he would have these little unique little fills that he did, that were just
Brand
like
X, he did so much cool stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
So much cool stuff. Yeah.
Crazy.
Great player. Great player.
Yeah. And one of those things where you ask kids, these days, they really don't know. They have no idea.
But that's okay. I mean, they know who they know, and maybe they'll discover that at some point. Look at me. Like I just said, I'm discovering bands from my childhood I didn't even know about, just kind of rediscovering all of this stuff, I mean,
that's the fun of the journey, right?
Kids will be kids, like,
yeah.
There's a reason for that saying, and God bless them. At least people are playing.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I think there's more kids than ever playing instruments, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be in their bedroom and they might not be doing it with a lot of other people, but there are a lot of, just look at YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube's, you could watch videos of young players until you're blue in the face.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean,
and
maybe it was like that when we were younger too. I mean, there were a lot of drummers in my neighborhood, there was a lot of guys, man, who just didn't have access to it,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Do you remember?
That's the one beauty of the internet.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I always mention this, but it's like I try to hold on to that feeling of the excitement of when you first started to play. Like that's the best feeling, and if you can hold on to that, so that when you go to sit down to play, try to get in touch with those like that sort of kid-like joy of hitting the instrument. Yeah. It's the best, man. It's like the best feeling.
I think that, I think you need other people for that. At least for me, like I said, when I got through, and these guys roll through here a couple times a week and we play, man, it takes me right back to being, in the mini storage in high school and,
right.
And rocking out. So
funny.
I love that.
Did, were you friends with Richard Christie that played with Death?
Yeah.
He talked about practicing in a storage room. Living in a storage room.
Oh, we all did.
Yeah.
I mean, like all of us had, just a mini storage.
Right.
I grew up playing in a 5x10 or 5x15, 20, whatever it was. And
yeah.
You would just build a wall and put a door in and an AC, and that'd be,
That's awesome.
The place that I had in South Carolina, there was, I think, just shy of 50 bands. I want to say just shy of 50 bands in there at the most, they had at one time. And it was just a big mini storage,
Wow.
50% of the place was bands.
I mean, that's really what, like in New York City, we have the music building on 38th Street. It's really the same thing. It's these little rooms with a lock. Bands share the rooms. All the floors are filled with bands. And it's just, in a city environment, it's not, it's not out at a storage place. It's in a building in the middle of downtown, or Midtown. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, we used to have, they've kind of they've cracked down on the bans and stuff because a lot of these places are in residential areas now, you know. So
Yeah, yeah.
and then a lot of the places that would let you do it in commercial areas, you probably wouldn't feel that safe, you know, keeping all of your stuff there. At least like if you have, you know, a lot of money invested into gear. You know?
Yeah. So I did want to ask about your pythons, which
Oh yeah.
which is like so. When I first kind of learned about that, I'm trying to remember. It was a long time ago, I think. And I know that you said like as a kid you had a fascination with snakes, and you had a pretty funny story about you were supposed to get one at a young age and it kind of got lost in your dad's car.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he brought
Well, so my
home the
dad is,
setup, but not the snake.
yeah, yeah, had the whole setup, the whole deal. He had gotten a call from our vet earlier that day. I guess the cat had brought in a scarlet king snake, and it was fine. It didn't have a mark on it, so he gave it to my dad, knowing that I wanted a snake. I was maybe, let's say, 5. Could have been right around the same time I got a drum kit. Like it was right around that same time period. Um, but first, I should mention that my dad is kind of like the Grizzly Adams type. We had rescued birds, foxes, squirrels, ducks, bobcats. I mean, like you, you know, you name it. I grew up with everything, and you know, snakes was obviously in that arsenal of animals that were always around. And yeah, so you know, he wanted. I was asking about a snake. Came home with no snake. Eventually, that animal it had gotten loose in the parking lot of the place he went to buy the aquarium at, so I could keep the snake. And somebody had caught it and taken it into the same pet store. So we went in and saw it in there, and the guy was like, "Yeah, somebody brought it in." And my dad was like, "But that's what I came in and bought all this stuff for." Was I went to the car and it was gone, so he gave it back to him.
Oh wow.
And I ended up letting it go. Like, and like my dad wasn't into like keeping anything really. He would like rehabilitate stuff and let it go. And every once in a while, we get a call, you know, because everybody knew my dad like saving animals, so we get calls from the neighbors and go pick up a black rat that was on somebody's patio, and then maybe we'd keep it for a week just for the experience of it. And then you know, well, a couple of times we had snakes lay eggs, so then we like let the mom go but kept the eggs and incubated them, and then let all the babies go. So that's kind of how I,
Wow.
you know. And then like later in high school, I had gotten my first like exotic snake, a ball python or Burmese or something, you know.
Right.
And I was in the local pet shop buying some rodents, and a guy came in that had carpet pythons, like baby carpet pythons, and I had never seen them before. Like even in like I had to go home and look in the encyclopedia. Remember when you used to have the whole volume of encyclopedia books?
Oh yeah.
I had to go look in the encyclopedia to look this snake up, you know, and found out that he was like right down the road, and he was a breeder, you know, like he was breeding these things. Wow, that's weird. So ended up meeting him, hooking up with him, and I kind of interned over there. He was like a mentor. I would go over and clean all of his cages. He had his whole garage filled with animals, and he was breeding stuff and selling them. And he like lived in the nicest part of town, and he like drove really nice cars, and he had a really nice home and stuff. And you know, I was going there, and he was always home. You know, him and his wife both, they were always there. You know, and I was like, And then we started going to the reptile shows together when they started cropping up, like in the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh.
And then I saw like, man, this guy's making like 6 figures a year from selling, breeding these animals. Like, and granted, you know, I was in high school, you know, so you know, I still had that, you know, idea. I want to move away from home, play music or whatever, but you know, always had it in the back of my mind, like, that's interesting. So as I'm touring over the years, I'm watching the industry real closely. And of course, I'm like really into it. And then with the advent of the internet, you really started to see like people started getting websites, and like a lot of this stuff we used to get through mailers. Same thing as music, right? Like fanzines. So like the whole snake market was you found out through the mail, and you would get these monthly mailers, and people would say, I've got this available, this available, this available. And you would order this stuff like sight unseen, and it would show up on your doorstep. Rattlesnakes, pythons, cobras, like whatever. You'd open a box and damn king cobra comes shooting out of the thing, you know. Like there were no laws about any of this stuff back then, you know. And there still isn't really. I mean, there's, you know, lobbying now has finally started to creep its way into the reptile industry, you know, and it's kind of put, you know, some weird things, you know, in legislation and whatnot. But typically, I mean, like when I started touring and I started, you know, seeing with my own eyes, you know, what was happening in the music industry and what was going to happen, you know, after the whole Lars thing, you know, that's why I have that shirt that says you should have listened to Lars,
Right.
you know, because, but I kind of saw it coming, you know, so I started making plans. So I started looking at snakes, and the carpet pythons really stuck out to me. So I had never really not had them. I mean, I had always kind of had some in different friends' collections as I was touring. I still owned animals and whatnot. They were just in different people's homes. But once I met my now wife, and she was kind of not, you know, not into them, but curious about them. Was kind of afraid of them at first, but totally got into it with me. Like, okay, let's do this kind of thing. And I spent, you know, probably 10 grand initially on a pair of a trio of blackheads. That's the species I now kind of, you know, specialize in.
Right.
And I just had a knack for it. Like these particular animals they're easy to breed, but the eggs are really hard to hatch, and you can't incubate them like you conventionally incubate like other python eggs or other reptile eggs in general. And I kind of over the 20 years working with them, I mean, I figured it out, you know, a decade ago, sort of, you know, figured it out. But I've been having really good success with them, and they're expensive animals. You know, they're $5,000 a pair.
Wow.
You know, and that's just normal ones. When you start adding in morphs, you know, albinism and xanthic, you know, where it's lacking yellow pigmentation. I mean, you start talking about animals that are 10 grand a pop.
Wow.
And you can have 10 or 20 of those just in 2 clutches.
And
you know, like, and the market's crazy. People spend money on this stuff, you know. It's especially during COVID, you would think. Like, but people were home and they were looking for things to do. Man, I had really, really good last couple of years, you know.
Wow.
Crazy, but so that has allowed me to be able to like do what I really want with music and not really stress like, oh my God, I have to be online every day giving lessons, or I have to like be constantly recording on stuff that I don't want to do.
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was able to kind of maintain my musical sense of why I've done this all along by having that, you know, be there and not trying to, you know, put all my eggs in one basket per se. not that there hasn't been monetarily good things that's come out of music. There has, right. But it's definitely been a combination, you know, over the years of mostly the animals really that's done the best for me. Yeah.
And are they at home? I mean, like, is the because I saw the photo of your all the cases, I guess.
Yeah.
All
they're here in the same complex in the same building. Yeah.
Right. So that's
yeah.
So really impressive. I mean, seeing the picture of the actual room, just wall of lighted.
That's fun. That's
tanks,
fun.
You know.
And you know, like, it's funny, man. I've had some of these, you know, people think about, oh, they're just snakes, and I don't have like, I don't assign personalities to these animals. Like, you know, they're very primitive, and I'm not saying again that they can't feel emotion and whatever, but it's very primitive. You know, reproduce, eat, sleep.
Right.
You know, am I threatened? You know, that's kind of it that goes on up here. You know, at least on a conscious level.
Yeah.
You know? But that said, you know, there's been some of these animals I've had 20 years. You know, you know how you get with, like, you know, attachments with things. I mean, these animals have names. They're my friends.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not like some of the guys that keep animals, you know, they keep them in drawers, and the, you know, only time they interact, you know, is through cleaning or feeding or whatever. Right. But, you know, I'm here all the time, and I interact, like when I come into the room. You know, all these animals are like, hey, you know,
they perk up.
What's going on? Is it feed day, or is, you know, like, it's, you know, it's a cool thing. And just to be surrounded by life is another thing. You know what I mean? Because, like, so many people spend all day on this thing surrounded by nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just the fact to have all of these heartbeats around all of this life energy.
Yeah.
And whether it's, you know, the snakes or whether you have animals at home or even if you like, you know, you go to the ocean. My wife and I, we're close to the beach, you know, and we're at the ocean several times a week,
Yeah.
you know, and just being there. And you know, something about the music of the natural music of our environments, you know, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
the natural connections that to the things that we have that maybe that's not conscious per se, you know what I mean? But I definitely think, you know, surrounding yourself with things like that, you know, I think that has a different impact on your life. You know?
Yeah. I mean, and they're beautiful to look at too. I mean, these hybrid sort of colorations that you have going on is really
It's
incredible.
living art.
Yeah.
Living art.
And
Yeah.
people can.
I did a reptile podcast last week actually, and it's something that the guy didn't think about. I was like, look, you know, like these animals, and when you talk about anybody, you know, any collector or any drummer or any guitar player, like whatever we put into our craft is an expression of ourselves, right? So
Yeah.
so it's the same with my snake collection. Like what I breed for in the things that I like and the things that catch my eye and be like, oh wow, that's a cool trait. I'm going to try to capitalize on that trait. You know, I'm going to try to, you know, make more art this way.
Yeah.
You know, and then when you start having those individualisms, you know, between collections, you know, that's an expression of yourself. The same way it is when I sit down on this kit
Yeah.
and I start expressing myself in real time. The animals is also a way to do that in real time, you know, and it's all just an expression. And you know, some guys that keep the same species that I do, they're breeding for different things. They're breeding for different traits, you know.
Yeah.
So then, like, you can look at a person's collection and you can like a person's animals and know, oh, those came from Derek, or oh, those came from Jim Sargent.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And it's kind of like the same thing as people being able to identify your drumming,
Right.
or your guitar playing, or you know what I mean. So it's all kind of hand in hand, really. It's kind of from a self-expression point of view, it's kind of the same.
Yeah. It's all related. I mean, what's incredible too is, I see the person. I mean, maybe it's just from observing you, but like the personality in your drumming, and bringing that to a high level, and the personality in your snake breeding and bringing that to a very high level quality,
Right.
you know, expression. It's really all
I mean, even something like
interrelated,
this,
right?
you know, even something like this, the finish of the kit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's all kind of interrelated. You know, it's like
Right. Ah, it's very
I
cool.
could have just black. You know,
Right.
And I like black. I like black drums. I'm kind of known for, even when in my sonar days, I was known for having these kind of, you know,
Exotic.
elaborate kind of
Yeah.
kits, exotic, you know, wood kits and whatnot. So
Yeah.
it's just a form of self-expression.
By the way, I just want to mention real quick, Mike D wrote, "Damn, late to the party. Big hails from NZ, Roddy, New Zealand."
All right, yeah, New Zealand, yeah.
Mike
yeah.
D and Peter
Hi,
Retzlaff
Mike.
is hanging with us. Thanks
Oh,
for
cool.
joining, Peter. Peter's a great New York drummer. Originally hails from Ohio, but he's a really brilliant drummer. He was on the
Right
show. Cool, man.
Yeah, you've had a lot of guys. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been
I'm glad to see you getting a lot of guys on.
it's been a really interesting journey. I mean, and you know, I try to really mix it up and have educators on and session guys on and touring guys on. And you know, recently I did my 100th episode with, on the same show, Dave Weckl, Dave Garibaldi, and Stanton Moore. So
Oh, nice. Yeah. I saw parts of that.
that was
actually.
super fun.
Yeah.
Because we had done a magazine together, Rhythm Magazine, over COVID. So I was like, it'd be cool to like do the four of us, you know, as like a stream. So that was super fun.
That's
But
cool. Yeah.
man, like I really appreciate you taking the time to do this hang and go down, you know, the drumming rabbit hole.
Yeah, sure.
You and I could probably go on the evolution of heavy music as a whole separate podcast. Maybe we'll do that one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
Totally.
have a few like speed round questions that I want to ask. So, and these are kind of like just quick answer kind of things, but some of them we already did. But so the
All right,
first,
cool.
let's say after the first drum kit, what was the first drum you owned after that? Like when you were 5 years old,
Okay,
you got that.
So
Yeah,
yeah, that was a Royce kit.
Royce.
I kept that up until I was about maybe 10.
Okay.
And then my dad got me a big R Rogers kit.
Yeah, man.
Oh yeah, the XP8.
You remember the finish?
If you're black.
Black.
Yeah, I wish I still had them.
Yeah,
I wish I
man.
still had those drums.
I know.
I sold those in high school to get a double bass rocker, Ludwig rocker kit.
Oh, wow.
Dumb choice.
Dude, I just found all the catalogs. I just found all the drum catalogs at my mom's place in Brooklyn. And I had a drawer full of all these old drum catalogs. I'm going to
still
pull them
got 'em.
out. Isn't it funny,
I got
man?
them in ring binders, dude. Yeah,
Yes.
my drum Bibles. Yeah.
They're in ring binders,
got 'em.
man. It's like that
Yep.
Ludwig catalog. You'd open it up, and it would have the Octoplus like double bass kit with all the concert toms, all the like 3 floor
Man, the
toms.
Sonar catalog with the signature kit that had the
Yeah.
6-panel fold out. Oh my God. I used to look at that thing like, oh geez.
Isn't it nuts, man?
Sweating.
Yeah. Oh my
You know,
God.
like, wow.
So funny, man.
Oh, man. Yeah.
First
Yeah.
record you bought with your own money. It might have been that Donna Summer record, right?
I know my dad bought that for me, but
Oh.
it was Kiss Double Platinum.
Yeah.
I remember. Yep. Kiss Double Platinum.
Remember they did, Strutter 78 on that? They did a remix of Strutter.
Yep.
I just remember that from that record. That's funny. By the way, you mentioned
Double
Alice Cooper
Platinum.
earlier. You know what Alice Cooper record I really loved and still love, and it was produced by David Foster, was the one From the Inside. That picture of Alice's face really up close, and he looks like a green hue. And you'd open
Oh yeah, right.
you open his face, and it was Doors to an Asylum.
Yeah, right.
And that
right.
was a
What that?
David
That wasn't
Foster
Welcome to
record.
My Nightmare.
What's that?
No, that wasn't Welcome to My Nightmare.
No,
right?
it was called From the Inside, and it was like it was
From
all
the Inside. Right. You said that. Yeah.
it was all like about living in this asylum, and it was a David Foster production. So there's all those keyboards and acoustic piano, and it had like there was a big hit on that record that was like a radio cut, and it was a ballad. I forget the name of the tune, but it was like a duet with him and a female singer. Crazy, like
Okay.
such a crazy Alice record, but I love that album. Anyway,
The one that stuck out to me from Alice was there was a couple songs I can remember from a kid that really dug into me, like for my whole life.
right?
2 of them was Devil's Food and The Black Widow.
Oh wow,
Alice Cooper. Yeah, and it had the Vincent Price thing, the montage in the middle of it about the Black Widow. And
yeah. Oh my God.
okay, so you have to go back and listen to that, and like you can kind of see where the love of heavy music,
Yeah.
because like the note selection on these particular songs, it's led to like the Black Sabbath and the Kiss and the more dissonant, into heavy metal, Motley Crue, that down that road. Another one was Aerosmith, Kings and Queens.
Yeah.
That
Oh my
song is so great. That's another
Unbelievable.
one that like sticks out to me from my childhood.
Me too, man.
I mean, most of the Kiss stuff, like especially Detroit Rock City and
Yeah.
the end of the first record, Black Diamond, when it's slowing down.
Oh yeah.
Like that used to scare me so bad when I was a kid because I
It's
was
getting-
really young, and my brother would just play it so loud, and
Yeah.
it was almost kind of scary.
Well, the first Black Sabbath album did that for me too.
yeah.
When it
Gene
was,
Simmons solo record,
oh yeah.
it had some pretty creepy stuff on it.
Yeah, man. Oh, that's funny.
yeah, so that's where my kind of taste for like going down that rabbit hole of that kind of darker music, that's what I was drawn to.
Yeah.
Um, from a really early age, like that particular note selection and that kind of dissonant minor harmonic kind of stuff, like, yeah, I was really digging into that even early. Yeah.
Aerosmith rocks. That record, the whole record
Yep.
is a little bit heavier and darker. Like Back in the
Yeah.
Saddle even, right?
Mhm.
Cuz he's like really kind of digging into like some harsh singing on that.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. I mean, that was some of the first. He really did have that kind of raspy. Him and Peter Criss was
Oh,
another
yeah.
one that had that really raspy. Like Peter could do some, for lack of a better word, he could do some great black metal screams. I mean, he was
Yeah.
even in Kiss,
Right.
Dirty Living, and
Yeah, I was going to say.
there's a lot of stuff that he sang on where he's got that really raspy kind of screamy thing going on. Yeah, I mean, it all started somewhere.
By the way, I'm trying to get Peter on the show, and like, I reached out to his management, and it hasn't worked out yet. But I had Alan Schwartzberg on the show, who played on some Kiss stuff, and he was trying to make the connection. So we're still working on that. But I think it would be really fun to have Peter on, because for him, like when he does appearances, he tends to get a lot of questions directed at sort of like the drama,
all the bullshit,
and all the bullshit, and being in Kiss, and like I want to talk to him about drum parts. You know what I mean? So like, I think
and his influences.
I think he would dig that, right? Like to go down, like what made you think of playing this on this record? Like, so anyway.
And look, maybe even say in the reach out, like, look, I'm not trying to be asking you a bunch of questions about Kiss. I want to know about your drumming.
Right.
Like, point that out, because I'm sure he does get tired of that.
Yeah, man.
Like people coming on wanting to know all the drama and stuff. Like, make it more about the drumming. I think he'd be keen.
A good buddy of mine went to one of those Kiss conventions, and so he was online to talk to Peter, and everybody's just getting an autograph and asking him like, oh, what was it like playing? And then so my buddy was like, asked him specific drumming questions. And he held up the whole line for like 10 minutes while he was talking drums. He lit up.
Yeah.
And his wife's going like, we got to keep it moving. And he was just like, no, he's going down the drummer rabbit hole.
Yeah, he probably doesn't get that a lot.
Yeah, probably not.
That'd be one of the first things I'd want to know.
Right.
What were you thinking recording the first record? Like, what was going through your head? Like, because I know a lot of that stuff he actually didn't play on, but those early records, you could tell it was him.
Yeah.
You could tell that, again, sound, like you knew the records that he wasn't playing on.
Oh,
you could hear it,
Yeah.
You could feel it.
Totally. Yeah.
I have a theory about the Black record. I don't think Lars played on the Black record.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know that for a fact, but when I really listened, I don't know if that's Lars, man. Like, I don't know. There's some key things about his playing that's on every record that I know he has done that's missing from that record. And I don't know. I don't buy it.
I think his best work was on Master of Puppets.
Oh yeah. Or Ride the Lightning's my favorite.
And Ride the Lightning. I mean,
Ride the Lightning and Master are both excellent. I mean, and Justice for All is great, man. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's very musical. Like, I mean,
come on, man. That came from that drum beat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's just things that that whole riff came from a drum beat.
Yeah.
It's like, that's one of those things.
That's true. Oh, that's funny.
Yep.
What was the first concert you ever attended?
I told you about that Kiss concert when I was really young. That was like the first like real concert. But I remember my mom and dad took us to like county fair type stuff. You know what I mean? And like, I don't remember maybe who it was that I saw. I didn't really pay attention. I was like, even then, like when I was real young, I was like, what kind of drums is he playing? Was that cymbal stand double brace? Like, what the how was that like holding up for him? And for me, it's not, and I would go down this rabbit hole of like drummer world and not even know who the heck I was looking at. That came later. That came after seeing Kiss, I think, and being like, oh,
It's funny. Like for me, I saw Kiss that same tour, But the same year, I also saw Buddy Rich play. My dad took me to Brooklyn
Oh,
Academy of
wow.
Music, so I saw Buddy play, and I was just
Never got
like
to see Buddy.
mind blown. Just like I was just like,
Yeah.
whoa, 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 what?
I
What is
bet.
happening?
I bet.
Yeah, yeah.
I bet.
Who was your first drum hero? So was it Peter Criss or?
Yeah, probably like Buddy or Peter.
Yeah.
You know, I was also. I mean, by the time I was a teen, by the time I was 13, at least 14, I was well aware of like Billy and Gad and
Yeah.
Cayuta, Weckl. You know, I like those people. They started like to surface, and we started to hear. I mean, Gad from Return to Forever, and Billy from Mahavishnu. Some of the other stuff that was done, Chick Corea more or less.
Yeah, man.
More so with Gad, but Lenny White, he was another one that was like on the records that we were listening to, but I didn't really like pay attention too much of that until later.
Yeah.
I
had Lenny on the show recently. Yeah. It was an interesting conversation.
Oh wow.
And
yeah, man, he's a monster.
He's an open-handed player, and like
One of the first.
We went down.
Saw.
Yeah, man. So we went down that whole open-handed playing rabbit hole of lefty approach. Super fun.
Right.
What was the first gig you ever did?
Okay, well, like I said, my brother and my cousin and I, when I was real young, like
Right.
5, 6, 7, 8, we were playing. So we were, but it was like I said, the church.
Yeah.
Weekend activity fair thing, or mom's garden club, whatever, yeah. Or some type of community thing, whatever. But my first real gig was the Ray Price talent show when I was 8, and I won the first round playing Wipeout.
Wow, that's a cool story.
Yeah, I was 8. I did radio interviews, the whole deal. Came back the second time, made the mistake of playing the same song.
Oh,
I really didn't know what else to play as a drummer as 8 years old. I really didn't. I mean, what other than Wipeout? Like,
yeah,
what are you gonna play? I mean? But I did the same song, and my dad was like, you're probably gonna lose because you did the same song. You changed.
That's
so,
funny,
Dad. Yeah, pretty funny. But and then after that, like I said, I got in middle school. I had my own original band. We played at the school talent show. So I was pretty accustomed to playing out by the time I was in my teens. I mean, I was playing, in front of people a good bit.
What was the first?
I would ask mom.
Big venue.
I would ask my mom to bring her friends over, and I would play Kiss for all of mom's friends and stuff, and I was definitely not shy about any of that.
It's funny you say that. I mean, I have to find these pictures, but we put on Kiss concerts before we even knew how to play. We were putting on the makeup. We'd put on the record.
Yeah.
And we would fake it. We were doing like the Milli Vanilli.
I would do that to Elvis.
Yeah.
When I was real young. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yep. What was the first big venue?
The first big show?
Yeah. Like where you went, oh, wow, that's a lot of people.
I don't know. I kind of never really. I mean, I would probably have to say that it was like the festival tours, being able to do like, Whacking and some of these other, like that's like, okay, you see, there's a sea of people, but there's such a big disconnect there.
Yeah.
Of that, I mean, with Hate Eternal, we were selling out, Key Club and, that kind of 1,500 capacity kind of venues,
Yeah.
Having those big festival things. I mean, honestly, some of the clinics I've done have been some of the biggest kind of audiences, like the PASIC in 08 after I had done the Modern Drummer Festival. That was like the only gig I thought I was going to pass out on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I literally thought I was going to black out when I walked out on stage for the Modern Drummer Festival.
Who else was on that particular one?
Suckerman, Gavin, Daphnis.
I've seen all of that, but yeah.
Billy Ward.
Yeah.
Billy Ward said the funniest thing to me after my performance. I walked out back and he was standing outside smoking his cigarettes, and he looked down on my shoes and I had on Pumas. and he said, "You should buy some jackrabbits." I was like, "All right."
That's funny.
I don't know what that means, but yeah, it was a funny kind of quirky comment. But he's quirky anyway, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Lovely drummer, man.
yeah.
Brilliant player.
Oh my God.
Um, but yeah, he was on there. And Todd started, oh, you know who else? This is a funny. This goes back again about your touch, because this is hilarious. And if you ever get Suckerman on,
I'm working.
Ask him about this.
Okay.
Because we're like had already pretty good friends, and when we played the festival, I told him, and he told me, he's like, "Look, we got to get a chance to interview. If you end up being with Bill Stewart, you got to ask him about his symbols."
Okay.
You know, I'll say, yeah, same thing. If you end up doing it, we got to figure out what's going on. So we had all of this planned beforehand, knowing that we were going to see him there. So we get there for setup, and sure as shit, there's his drum kit set up with his symbols on it, and he's nowhere around. He had gotten set up early, and I guess he was gone, right? So Todd and I are both there together, and we're like, man, I don't know, should we just go over there and tap him, see what the deal is? And like, yeah, let's go over there and tap him. And I remember Todd grabbing a stick out of his stick bag and hitting like the symbol like once and going, that sounds like crap. You know what I mean? Like, dude, that sounds like absolute dog crap. Like, all of these symbols sound like garbage. What's going on? And we like literally we had this ongoing thing with this. Like, we thought that maybe somehow or another that he was like setting people up. You know what I mean? And he put like these complete dog like symbols on his kit because maybe that's he gets at. And we were making up all this stuff in our mind. You know, like, you know, what is it? You know, what is it about the symbols? Ironically, Todd and I ended up interviewing each other, right, for the interview part. So we never got a chance to actually talk, but the symbols didn't change. And he went out there, and those things sounded so beautiful. I mean, like, it was,
oh my God,
it sounded like Bill, like what you would expect from Bill's symbols. And like Todd and I looked at each other like,
like, what?
No, there's no way. There's no way those are the same symbols. Absolutely not. We were going through symbol bags, like looking for the ones he took off. And so, I mean,
oh, that's hilarious.
Oh man, dude, hilarious, you know? But again, that comes down to the person. It has nothing to do with the gear.
Oh my God.
You
That's
know?
a great story.
Because when Todd and I played those symbols, we were like, that is complete crap. This is a joke.
He's got like,
there's no way these are the symbols he's playing. Yeah, you know?
They sound like old Camber symbols. Like, what is this?
Yeah, just complete crap. You know,
my
like,
God.
But he got up there.
Of course, right?
You know, like,
oh my God.
Yeah. Insane.
It's funny. Todd said he's going to do the show, but we don't have a date set yet because he's been super busy. But
oh yeah, he's always. I just saw him here this last week. They were here in town.
Oh, cool. I'm trying to encourage him to get
great.
in here soon, but you know, we'll see.
I'll put in a good word.
Nice. Yeah, Todd's another one, man. I love his playing, and he's always really inspirational, and he's a funny dude.
Man, I got a phone call from him one day. This is hilarious. You'll appreciate this. And he left me a message, this long-winded message. He's like, "Hey, Zuckerman, don't know where you are, but I just heard something very cool, and I thought maybe you might like to know." He goes, "So, if you recently know, Fred Armisen has done this special called Stand Up for Drummers."
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm thinking in my mind, yeah, I've heard of this because he left it on voicemail. Yeah, I've heard of this. He goes, okay, so yeah, this is special about drummers, whatever. Fine. At the end of that, they're at the LA Pro Drum Shop, and Vinny Caluta is there with Clem, and they're trying to sell Fred Armisen all of this stuff, you know? And he says at some point, Vinny Caluta shoves a Modern Drummer DVD in his face, and he says, "Look, it's got Derek Roddy and Todd Zuckerman on it." And he stopped and he giggled. He said, "Vinny Caluta." And he goes, "Yes, that's right. Vinny Caluta just name dropped us in a Fred Armisen drum special. And I thought you should know. And I thought who you should hear it from is me. So have a good day." I'll send you the voicemail. It's hilarious, man. He is so giddy and through the roof. And then that made me like, are you serious right now? Really? And like, so I had to like go, I was looking everywhere on YouTube and like trying to find it. And sure enough, he does. He name drops us, both of us.
Oh,
couldn't believe it. Like, oh my God, that's hilarious.
That's a great story. Oh
that
my
funny?
god. Oh my god. Did you ever
Funny,
see
us
that whole
drummers.
special, by the way? The stand up
Yes,
for
I did.
drummers thing?
Yeah.
Did you ever
Yeah,
see
it was
his
kind of
thing?
quirky.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever see Fred Armisen's thing where he's like a Swedish drummer, like in a
Oh,
ponytail on
Jens
the giant?
Hammond. Yeah, oh, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, if he didn't nail that,
Oh my god.
oh my god.
So
The
great.
funniest one though is the older guy, right? In his video, the older guy, just like a Fred Gruber kind of character, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like, and he's trying to tighten the snares, and he's like tightening them so much that they fly off and crack him in the nostril. He's like, God damn it! He flips out. Oh my god, I lost it. Lost it.
It's the best.
It's so good, so good. That was
Uh,
absolutely perfect.
Oh man.
Yeah, man.
All right. One record.
Again, drummers.
Besides,
you
yeah,
know, like-
exactly. One record besides the Donna Summer record that people may be surprised that you listen to currently. Let's say.
Oh wow! I'm currently, God, I don't know. I mean, you know, again, I've kind of been on this whole classic prog thing, you
Yeah.
know, lately. I mean, the fact that I even listen to metal, you know, is a shock to me because I mean, I listen to a lot of the, you know, stuff I grew up with, you know.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I have a pretty broad musical taste, but I don't think it's like so far out of the realm of what people are already themselves listening to, you know.
Right.
I mean, everything from country to, you know, southern rock.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know. I really can't think of anything, you know,
Barry
that would
Manilow.
shock people at least. Barry Manilow, ABBA. Like some
Right.
of those songs are great, you know. Going back to our childhood, you know, the '80s and whatnot, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Kind
That's
of
great.
a weird thing, I guess.
And by the way, speaking of the whole prog thing, you know, let's say rest in peace to Alan White, who was a brilliant drummer, gone
Yeah.
way too soon, right? And Taylor Hawkins, which
Yeah.
on the Memorial Day episode, we talked about all the drummers we had lost over the last years, but those two guys in particular, you know, everybody should, you know, remember. But-
Charlie too.
And Charlie, yeah,
Charlie
yep.
Watt, too, Charlie Watts.
yeah, and
Yeah,
actually,
I mean, you know, it's I've done a lot of like drum events with Alan in the past. You know, we ran, you know, in the same kind of circles with the drum company stuff for many years. You know,
right,
I know what I'd always see him, and he was always such a pleasure to be around and just a graceful human being. You know,
right, yeah. I
sucks to
mean,
lose him.
yeah, for sure. All right, and then one last thing in the speed round thing. I think we covered all the drummers because we did talk about a lot of drummers. But I'll just
Yeah.
mention two other names. So, first reaction when I say the name, because it's really funny. You and I mentioned like half the people on this list. But first thing that comes to mind when you hear the name, let's say Chester Thompson. Pulled that one out of my head.
That beautiful Sonar kit, man. Like back in the day when before he switched
Oh,
to
yeah.
VW. I have a picture of that on my laptop.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Wait, I have a.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like he was another guy that you know, just it fit exceptionally well with, you know, everything that he was doing. He was that guy that just came in, he did exactly what was perfect,
Yeah.
you know. And yeah, I mean, he kept that Genesis gig for a long time, man.
Yeah, man. I dig him with like the
Yeah.
Zappa stuff before that too.
Yeah.
I mean
Yeah.
that there's a
Guys are
live
brilliant.
the live Zappa thing with it's George Duke, Chester Thompson, and
Yeah.
Ruth Underwood and like that lineup, and it's just
Yeah.
like absolutely killing. And let's give it to because we talked about Gad and Caluta and everybody. Oh, how about we didn't talk about Neil Peart.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Neil.
Gotta love Neil.
I mean, what am I gonna say about Neil? I mean, Neil said everything, that all of us, has ever wanted to say,
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is he was in a situation and in a band that let him be him, and like that, I think more than anything, like that contributed to that band's success more than anything, because they allowed themselves to be themselves, and they weren't trying to like fit into a mold, or they weren't trying to sound like somebody, or they, like that's the one thing that I take away from not just Neil, but from Rush in general, you know.
And that's like grassroots, like building fans. You know what I mean? It's like they just did what they did. They didn't take direction really from anybody, and they built it from the ground up. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and and people ask me about Neil all the time. I say, well, he's the best drummer that Rush could have ever had.
Right.
Because you get this whole like, well, who's the best drummer in the world stuff, and a lot of people throw Neil out there. And, I love Neil as much as anybody.
Right.
And my response is always, he's the best drummer that Rush could have ever asked for.
Yeah.
Nobody could have done that the way that Neil did that.
Right. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And you, my friend, are like the cutting edge of what you do. It's like you raised the bar, and you kind of set a high bar for a lot of people to try to bring it, to heavy music in particular. But not only that, you're such a musical player that, you don't see that in guys a lot. There's a lot of this sort of homogenized version of stuff out there, but everything that I've heard you play is very, very musical. And it's like,
oh, thanks.
It makes me realize, it's coming from a deeper place than just, like some of the guys that we hear out there who they can play every, thing perfect.
I think maybe I don't think about it any differently. I think is because like you probably know this too. Like sometimes when I've done clinics, like drummers that aren't familiar with like extreme metal music, they just kind of assume that you speed it up.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not the same thing as playing every note in a measure. The 3-minute song is still the 3-minute song.
Right.
It's just that you're playing every note in a measure. It's not just sped up. And I think that like that's a separation in people's minds that they can't. Because like if you were to just speed something up, that means that the song would go from 3 minutes to 50 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, and that's not what's happening. What's happening is I'm simply playing every beat in the measure. Right. So if I played a groove that had, this might get noisy, but
that's all right.
Do it soft. But if I was playing a groove that's it kind of had that feel. It's the same thing as
right.
So it's kind of, it's like all I'm doing is playing all the notes.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think about it any differently than if I was just playing, just a standard typical rock and roll groove. And then that allows me to be able to subdivide all of those notes down into something that makes sense for people, into some type of rhythmical thing, a rhythmical pulse that people can feel within all of the notes, So I think once that gets explained, it makes it a little easier to kind of like, well, how do you remember all of that stuff? But it's the same as anything else. I'm just playing all the notes that are already there.
Right. You're playing more, subdivisions.
Like for me, it's more complicated to remember stuff that has less notes in it.
Right.
Because like if I'm playing every note of the measure, I always know where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'm playing, you know, I always know where click, it's not necessary. And even when I play slow, I just saw Thomas Lane just did a lesson about this where even when I play slow, I'm still hearing,
Right.
It's still, so that's the difference. I feel all of the increments where a lot of guys don't. So if you can feel the increments, then you can make sense of the style like really easily,
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And
right?
yeah, and to that point, like what you were just saying about when you're playing slower tempos, you're always thinking in smaller subdivisions because you're filling up the time. You're giving yourself anchor points.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, it's pretty interesting.
And with extreme metal, you're just playing all of that instead of internalizing it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a really good way to think about it and to put it. Very cool.
Yeah, it's not just about like speeding up the song or what,
Yeah.
like most people just think you just turn up the metronome and everything just gets faster with it. And it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
Everything is still exactly the same. You're just playing more notes.
Yep. Oh, very cool. Well, I think this is a good point. We're gonna wrap here, and then I may hit you up later in the year if you want to do another one.
Yeah, sure.
Putting you on the spot live.
Yeah, I'm always game.
But going down sort of maybe a little history of extreme music kind of rabbit hole together.
Sure.
Drawing some
maybe we could grab a couple of other guys too to fill in the void.
I think that would be super fun.
Yeah.
What's on the way out? What's one extreme metal band maybe that's newer that you're digging these days?
Newer? I mean, I wouldn't say this like, there's a lot of newer stuff. A lot of the bands that are around have been around.
Well, that's true.
Like
that's
a lot
true.
of the like newer bands that are circulating now have been around a while. But there's like Psychroptic from Tasmania, with that they're all in Australia now, but
yeah,
like they're a really good example of guys that are really taking the notation of what they're playing serious, or like if the guitar player is asking the drummer to play 16th notes at 250, very rarely is the guitar player picking that same note value.
Right.
A lot of times they'll end up in triplets or whatever, but like those guys are one of the only bands where the drummer and the guitar player are really, it's locked in and it's tight, and
gears.
it may not be, it fits together like really perfectly. And although like some of their stuff, because it's so tight and so geared together at 220, sounds faster than a lot of these guys playing 280.
Right.
Because it's just slop under some fast drums, So I appreciate that about those guys. Psychroptic, the drummer Dave and his brother Joe actually plays guitar, but Dave is one of the finest extreme metal drummers around. I mean, he's
cool.
really incredible, really consistent, really good.
I'll have to look that up.
On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, there's another band named Portal.
Portal?
Like a portal to another world.
Yeah.
And they're probably my favorite extreme metal band ever. If you were to take, like a field trip to the devil, that's probably what will be playing on the bus. It's absolutely terrifying, dude. I mean, like there's some stuff on there that's if my metalhead friends around here, like say for instance, like, Deicide's my favorite band.
Yeah.
If I ever want to like get somebody out of here, I put that stuff on, because that even Deicide fans are like, bro, that's too much for me, bro. I gotta get it,
Wow.
Like, so I like that expression for the most part, more or less than like the music itself, but the fact that they have the musical balls to go out and do what they're doing.
Wow.
There's another band that I really, they don't exist anymore as this particular band, but they're called Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum. And like that group of musicians that play in that band is probably like my favorite group of musicians on earth that play together. And like the new band that they have is called Free Salamander Exhibit. right?
What?
And Free Salamander exhibit. Yeah. The other one is Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum.
Oh my God.
But Free Salamander exhibit, there's like, 8 songs on their, release that came out. And all of these guys, they're all like, they met in the symphony, like in Oakland, in school, playing in orchestra. And all of these guys are like A+ accomplished musicians, right? So the guitar player, who's like, one of the main singers in the band, he's got one guitar solo on the entire record, right? And this guy can play like Yngwie. I mean, he's ridiculous. He's Paul Gilbert kind of technician, but
Yeah.
so this one solo on the entire record, and it sounds like it was recorded by his 4-year-old child.
That's great.
I mean, it's just full of wrong notes and the most horrible bends that you can imagine. And the vibrato is complete shit, right? But think about this for a minute. The size of the musical nuts on this guy, right? He's got one chance on an entire record to show what he can do. Let me see what you got, kid. And that's what he chooses to do.
That's great. Oh my God.
Dude, I respect the hell out of that. You know what I mean? Because he can do all this other stuff, but he doesn't need to show that to anybody. He doesn't need to prove that to anybody.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
You know? And that's like, that to me is what separates the great players and the great musicians from the good guys, the guys that are just, average dudes like me or whatever, that like, I hear this and I'm like, wow, I don't know if I would have had the balls to do that. I really don't.
Right. Oh, that's funny.
I
wrote all that down. I'm going to be looking that up. Oh my God.
Tremendous group. I mean, like there is some of the heaviest stuff you'll ever hear, but there's no distorted guitars really. Like they make a lot of their own instruments. So like you only hear it there,
Oh, that's
like
crazy.
the only place you'll hear any of those sounds is with that band. I mean, because they hand make instruments and out of bicycle wheels and
Oh my God.
all kinds of crazy stuff, like,
Oh, that's great.
yeah, cool stuff.
Wow, man. Free Salamander
Love it.
exhibit. Well, awesome hang, my brother.
Drummer's
this was
brilliant.
super fun. Oh, what's his name, by the way?
David Shamrock.
David Shamrock.
Yeah, great player. He's more of a composer per se than like I would say, drummer, more percussionist, composer kind of thing. But his feel on the drum kit and his voicing and man, he's a great player.
Wow.
Cool stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like what you were saying about, the guitar player choosing to do that with his solo. I know I brought up Zappa a lot tonight, but there's a Zappa tune on a Mother's record on Weasels Rip My Flesh where like Zappa's going like drummer A is playing in 3/4, drummer B is playing in 5/8. Like he's naming what everybody's doing, and then he goes, and the sax player is blowing his nose, and like the sax solo is just like bonk,
Yeah.
and you're like,
And I'm sure that's where these guys, they're big Zappa influenced, type of band, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm sure that's where it all came from.
That's funny, man.
Again, that takes
Totally.
confidence.
Yeah.
Like,
to go.
that takes knowing who you are as a musician, and there's not a lot of that these days. So it's refreshing to see.
Yeah. Well, it's like Caluta doing the Seal solo on where Zappa's like, give me play the tiny little tom toms and make seal noises. It's like
That's so funny.
It's like that guy can play anything, right? But instead it's it's awesome.
Yeah. That's what he commands you to do. So you do it.
That's right. Well, so in the description of the video tonight, I have your website so people can find out more about what you're up to, about Serpent's Rise. So
right on.
Music, anything that you're up to. And I listed your website for the Black-Headed Pythons. So I have the two websites listed. So if anybody's interested in reaching out to you about that as well. You are a breeder
do.
and you do sell them. And so I really want to thank you for being so generous with your time and hanging all this time with me. And if
Thank you.
anybody doesn't have this, pick up the evolution of blast beats, because this is really like the definitive
do.
guide on this, which there's tracks and then there's your Hudson DVD, right?
Right.
So
There's two of them. There's playing with your drums,
oh right,
which
right.
is kind of a setup video, like starting from the seat up, and
Yeah.
then there's a video component to go with the book.
Right. So the video
Blast Beats
component is
Evolved.
really cool as well. So definitely check out those titles. And yeah, man. And hopefully one day we'll do this again.
Hey, yeah. Hey, hold on just a second. Somebody's knocking on my door for the second time.
Yeah,
Hang
yeah.
on. I'll finish up with you in a second. Let me
All
see
right,
who this
cool.
is. Hold on.
Yeah, hit it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you dug it tonight. I know I did. Super, super fun. Thank you to all the people in the chat tonight. As always, I know we went 3 hours. I've probably done half a dozen of, these longer formats, but I appreciate everybody hanging that's been here tonight. Super fun to go down those rabbit holes. I'm an old metalhead from way back when. So grew up listening to Dave Brubeck, Buddy Rich, and Slayer, Anthrax, Talus, all these bands. Yeah, Stacy, so cool, right? Super fun. Yeah, man.
Weird. Nobody there.
That
That was weird.
That's weird.
Must have been the cats outside or something. I swear I heard like knock, 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 knock. Of course, I have my ears in too, but
Oh, that's funny.
that was weird. Yeah, man. So yeah, anytime. I would love to come on.
Yeah, man.
Anytime.
And maybe we'll
me a
do,
heads up.
like you said, maybe we'll get like maybe a third person on, and we'll go down that evolution rabbit hole of
Yeah, sure.
the evolution of heavy drumming.
Right on.
And
right on.
and I was just saying before, we have such a great group of people in the chat tonight, so I appreciate that. Of course, we gave away 6 pairs of Vader Derek Roddy signature drumsticks.
You'll like those, whoever got them.
to my man in
most
Iowa.
Everybody I hand them to.
Yeah.
Most everybody I hand them to likes them. They're almost a 5B. Like they're not quite, a 5B, but they're close.
Cool.
So yeah, I like them a lot. Good
Yeah,
stick.
man. And thanks to Vader for the support, of course. And
course.
yeah, and we'll see you guys on the next one. And tune in next week, since it's the 4th of July. I'm not streaming, so I may run a rerun just so something's up there.
There you go.
But then the next couple of weeks will be Fav. John Favicki is going to be on.
Oh, good.
Ray
Yeah,
Levere. And then to kick off my August streams, Simon Phillips will be on the show. That'll be super fun.
That'll be fun.
So yeah. So thanks to everybody who hung tonight. I'm gonna find my closing credits. Oh, there we go. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, guys.
All right.